The rain fell in sheets as Emma clutched her swollen belly, tears streaming down her face as the bar owner shouted for her to leave and never come back. From the shadows of a nearby alley, Michael watched, a man with a complicated past and a talent for deception. But something about the girl's desperate situation awakened a long-dormant sense of justice within him that he couldn't ignore. As the bar owner turned away from the sobbing, pregnant teenager, Michael stepped forward, his expensive suit suddenly feeling like armor as he prepared to use his skills of manipulation for something other than personal gain. The bar owner had no idea that the smooth-talking stranger about to enter his establishment would completely upend his life and business within the next 24 hours. What shocking revelation about the bar owner will Michael uncover that changes everything? If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to our channel and share your own experiences of unexpected kindness in the comments below. Michael Reeves adjusted his Italian silk tie and smoothed the lapels of his tailored suit. The rain beaded off the expensive fabric as he watched the bar owner retreat inside. The neon sign above the entrance flickered. Frank's Place. Nothing special about the establishment at first glance. Just another hole-in-the-wall bar in a forgotten corner of the city. But something about the owner's casual cruelty toward the pregnant girl stirred memories Michael had spent years burying. He hadn't always been Michael Reeves. He'd worn many names, many identities. The suit was real, the watch was real, but everything else, from his accent to his business cards, was carefully crafted fiction. Michael had learned early that the world was divided into predators and prey, and he'd sworn never to be the latter again. At 34, he'd perfected the art of the con. His specialty was targeting the corrupt and greedy, those who believed themselves untouchable. There was always something satisfying about watching arrogance crumble. Michael hesitated, glancing back toward where the girl had disappeared. She wasn't his problem. He had bigger targets, more lucrative cons in motion, and yet, get your pregnant ass out of my bar. I don't need your kind bringing down the vibe. The bar owner's words echoed in Michael's mind. A memory flashed. His mother, 19 and pregnant, being thrown out of her parents' home. Later, she'd abandoned him at a bus station when he was 7. Her parting words, "I never asked for this life." Michael shook his head, dispelling the image. He was getting soft, sentimental, dangerous traits in his line of work. Still, he found himself walking toward Frank's Place, a plan already forming. The interior was exactly what he expected. Sticky floors, dim lighting, the stale smell of beer and desperation. A few afternoon drinkers hunched over their glasses, avoiding eye contact. Behind the bar, the owner, Frank, was wiping glasses with a dirty rag, his expression sour. Michael slid onto a bar stool, making sure his Rolex caught the light. Scotch. Neat. Whatever's top shelf. Frank eyed him suspiciously. Men in suits like Michael's didn't usually wander into Frank's Place. Coming right up. As Frank poured, Michael casually pulled out his phone, the latest model, and placed it on the bar. He pretended to review emails while actually observing Frank's reflection in the mirror behind the bottles. The man was in his 50s, overweight, with small, calculating eyes that constantly scanned the room, assessing what could be extracted from each patron. Passing through, Frank placed the drink before Michael. Michael took a sip, hiding his grimace at the mediocre liquor. "Actually, I'm looking at properties in the area. Development opportunity." He flashed a business card. Reeves International. Investments. Frank's expression changed instantly. Predatory interest replacing suspicion. "This neighborhood's on the up. Got some prime real estate myself. Is that right?" Michael signaled for another drink. Always looking for local partners who understand the terrain, someone who knows which palms to grease. Frank leaned in, lowering his voice. "I've got connections. City council, zoning board, you name it. Valuable. Assets." Michael nodded appreciatively. "Perhaps we should discuss this further." By the third drink, Frank was describing various business opportunities in the area, each one more questionable than the last. Michael noted how quickly Frank revealed his corrupt nature, a man used to operating with impunity. "What about the girl?" Michael asked casually. Frank's expression darkened. "What girl?" "The pregnant one, outside earlier." Frank waved dismissively. "Local trash. They're always trying to scam something. Claim they know someone who works here, need money, need a phone call. Seemed young. They all have sob stories." Frank snorted. "This is a business, not a charity. Besides," he leaned closer, alcohol loosening his tongue, The clientele I cater to after hours. They don't come here for pregnant teenagers crying in the corner. The implication hung in the air. Michael maintained his neutral expression while internally mapping out a new plan. What had started as an impulsive intervention was crystallizing into something more deliberate. "Speaking of after hours," Michael said, checking his watch, "I should get going. Early meeting tomorrow." He placed a $100 bill on the counter. "Keep the change. And I'd like to continue our conversation. Perhaps see what other ventures you're involved in." Frank's eyes gleamed with greed. "Anytime. I've got some special events, very exclusive, for discerning businessmen. Sounds intriguing." Michael pocketed a business card from Frank. "I'll be in touch." Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Michael adjusted his coat and turned in the direction the girl had fled. Frank had just revealed enough to confirm he wasn't just a callous bar owner. He was something worse, and Michael had found his next mark. Michael found her 3 blocks away, huddled in the recessed doorway of a closed pawn shop. The pregnant girl had pulled her thin jacket over her head, a futile shield against the persistent drizzle. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. He approached, cautiously, stopping several feet away. "Hey," she startled, eyes wide with fear as she pressed herself further into the doorway. "Leave me alone. I'm not going to hurt you," Michael said, keeping his distance. "I saw what happened at the bar." Her gaze darted past him, searching for escape routes. Michael recognized the look. He'd worn it himself as a child. "I'm Michael." He slowly reached into his pocket and withdrew a business card, placing it on the ground between them. "You can call someone if you need to, or I can get you somewhere warm for the night." "I don't go with strange men," she said, her voice stronger than he expected. "Smart," Michael nodded. "How about this? There's a diner around the corner. Public place. You can get something to eat. Call whoever you need to." She hesitated, one hand protectively cradling her swollen belly. "Why would you help me?" It was a good question, one Michael wasn't entirely sure he could answer. "Let's just say I don't like guys like Frank." He took a step back, giving her space. "What's your name?" Another hesitation then. "Emma." "Emma," he repeated. "How far along are you?" 8 months, she whispered. "Almost." Michael did the mental calculation. "You need to get warm and dry. That can't be good for the baby." At the mention of her child, something shifted in Emma's expression, self-preservation warring with maternal instinct. She slowly reached for the business card, examining it carefully. "Reeves International Investments," she read. "You don't look like someone who'd care about a pregnant girl in the rain." Michael almost smiled. She was observant. Appearances can be deceiving. The diner was nearly empty when they arrived. Emma slid into a booth, keeping her back to the wall, eyes on the exit. Michael recognized the habits of someone who'd learned to be vigilant. He ordered coffee for himself, hot chocolate, and a full breakfast for her. When the waitress left, he noted how Emma's shoulders remained tense, her posture ready for flight. "You said you were looking for someone at the bar?" Michael prompted. Emma stared into her hot chocolate. "My aunt. She used to work there. I hoped. When did you last see her?" 3 years ago. Before I moved in with Jake." She absent-mindedly touched her belly. "My boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend. The father?" Emma nodded, blinking back tears. "He said he loved me. Said we'd be a family. Then I got pregnant, and suddenly he had opportunities in another state. Blocked my number." The waitress delivered Emma's food. Eggs, bacon, pancakes. Emma stared at the plate, then began eating with controlled restraint that suggested it had been a while since her last proper meal. "What about your parents?" Michael asked. Emma's expression hardened. "My father is a deacon at Christ Salvation Church. When I told them I was pregnant, my mother cried for 3 days. My father said I had 2 choices. Get rid of my sin or get out of his house. And you chose the baby." "I chose my baby," Emma confirmed, her voice stronger. "I've been staying with friends, but you can only crash on couches for so long before people get tired of you. And your aunt was your last option." Emma nodded, pushing eggs around her plate. "Aunt Melissa. She wasn't really my aunt. My mom's cousin, the black sheep of the family." A faint smile. "She used to sneak me candy during church, send me birthday cards with $20 bills. She worked at Frank's place as a bartender. I thought maybe." "When did you last hear from her?" "She stopped answering her phone about 8 months ago. Her apartment was rented to someone else. It's like she just disappeared." Emma looked up, sudden suspicion in her eyes. "Why do you care? What do you want from me?" It was a fair question. Michael considered his answer carefully. "Let's say I'm in a position to help, and I'm choosing to. You need somewhere safe to stay. Tonight. I have space. At your place? Emma's guard immediately went up. No way. I have a housekeeper. Mrs. Chen. She's there all the time. You'd have your own room with a lock. One night? Then tomorrow we figure out next steps. Emma studied him, weighing her limited options. Outside, the rain had started again, heavier this time. I don't have anywhere else, she finally admitted, her voice small. One night, Michael repeated. If you're uncomfortable, you can leave any time. The bill paid. They stepped outside where Michael's sleek black car waited. Emma hesitated again. How do I know you're not worse than what I'm already facing? Michael met her gaze directly. You don't. But I give you my word, for whatever that's worth, that no harm will come to you or your baby under my roof. Emma took a deep breath, one hand protectively over her belly. One night, she agreed. And I'm keeping my phone on me at all times. I wouldn't expect anything less, Michael said, opening the passenger door. As they drove through the rain-slicked streets, he caught Emma studying his profile. Are you really an investment banker? She asked. Michael smiled slightly. No, Emma. I'm definitely not an investment banker. Then what are you? He considered various lies before settling on a version of the truth. I'm someone who's good at making people believe what I want them to believe. A con man, Emma translated. Michael didn't confirm or deny. He simply drove, wondering what had possessed him to bring this pregnant stranger into his carefully constructed world, and why he felt certain that Frank's dismissal of her had only been the tip of a much darker iceberg. Emma's eyes widened as Michael's car passed through wrought iron gates and wound up a long driveway. The house that emerged from the darkness was not what she had expected. A sprawling modern mansion, all glass and steel, perched on a hillside overlooking the city. You live here? She asked, unable to mask her surprise. Sometimes, Michael replied cryptically. The garage door opened automatically, revealing a row of luxury vehicles. Michael parked beside a vintage Jaguar and came around to help Emma out of the car. She accepted his hand reluctantly, her other arm cradling her belly. Michael, you're soaked through. An elderly Asian woman appeared at the door to the house, her stern expression softening when she spotted Emma. And who is this? Mrs. Chen. This is Emma. She needs a place to stay tonight. Michael's tone was respectful, almost deferential. Emma, this is Mrs. Chen. She runs this house and, frankly, my life. Mrs. Chen approached Emma, her keen eyes taking in the girl's condition, the damp clothes, the exhaustion etched into her young face, the advanced pregnancy. Without a word, she took Emma's arm. Hot bath first, then tea, then sleep, Mrs. Chen declared, leading Emma inside. She glanced back at Michael. The blue room is ready. Michael nodded, watching as Mrs. Chen guided Emma through the house. Once, they disappeared. He moved to a sleek home office off the main hallway. He pressed his palm against a concealed scanner, and a hidden door slid open, revealing a room filled with computer equipment, multiple monitors, and a wall of filing cabinets. He shed his wet jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and began researching Frank's place. Meanwhile, Mrs. Chen helped Emma into a large bathroom with a deep soaking tub. She tested the water temperature and added bath salts. Pregnant women need warm, not hot, she instructed. Towels here. Robe here. Call if you need. She pointed to a button by the tub. I bring clean clothes. Left alone, Emma sank into the warm water with a sigh of relief. The bathroom was bigger than any apartment she'd stayed in over the past months. Everything spoke of wealth. The marble fixtures, the plush towels, the array of expensive toiletries. But something felt off. The bathroom, like what she'd seen of the house so far, was impeccably designed, but strangely impersonal. No family, photos, no personal items, nothing that revealed anything about the owner. After her bath, Emma found a soft nightgown and robe laid out. They were new, tags still attached. She dressed and ventured into the bedroom, the blue room Mrs. Chen had mentioned. Like the bathroom, it was beautiful, but generic, like a high-end hotel suite rather than someone's home. She found Mrs. Chen in the kitchen, preparing a tray of tea and light food. Sit, the woman instructed, pointing to a stool at the counter. Eat. Emma sank onto the stool, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. How long have you worked for Michael? 8 years, Mrs. Chen replied, placing a steaming cup of herbal tea before Emma. Drink. Good for baby. This house, Emma began, looking around at the expansive kitchen with its gleaming appliances and pristine countertops. It doesn't feel lived in. Mrs. Chen's expression remained neutral. Michael has many houses. Why? The older woman regarded Emma for a long moment. Michael is complicated man. Is that his real name? Michael? A small smile touched Mrs. Chen's lips. To me, yes, always Michael. The sound of footsteps interrupted their conversation as Michael entered the kitchen, now dressed in dry clothes, expensive-looking loungewear that still somehow appeared formal on him. The blue room is ready for you, he told Emma. It has its own bathroom and a lock on the door. Mrs. Chen's quarters are just down the hall if you need anything. Emma nodded, trying to read his expression. Thank you. For tonight, of course. Michael hesitated, then added, We'll figure out next steps in the morning. You keep saying we, Emma observed. You don't even know me. Sometimes strangers are the best allies, Michael replied. Get some rest. As Emma followed Mrs. Chen to her room, she glanced back to see Michael returning to what appeared to be an office. Something about his demeanor had changed. The smooth-talking man who'd approached her in the rain now seemed focused, almost predatory. In the blue room, Emma found herself drawn to the large windows overlooking the city below. Lights twinkled in the distance. So many lives unfolding in those buildings. Somewhere down there was Frank's place, where she'd hoped to find her aunt. Mrs. Chen, Emma asked as the older woman turned down the bed. Do you know what Michael really does? Mrs. Chen paused, smoothing the already perfect bedding. He helps people who cannot help themselves. By conning people? By making bad people face consequences. Mrs. Chen corrected. Then, with unexpected gentleness, she added, like all of us, Michael wears masks, but under masks, good heart. After Mrs. Chen left, Emma tested the door lock, then sank onto the bed. Despite her wariness, exhaustion soon pulled her into sleep. Meanwhile, in his office, Michael compiled information about Frank Sullivan, owner of Frank's Place, tax records, property deeds, business licenses, many registered to different shell companies, but all leading back to Frank. The bar was just the public face of a much larger operation. Michael stared at the growing evidence on his screens, a familiar cold anger building within him. Frank Sullivan was not just a callous bar owner who'd turned away a pregnant girl. He was something far worse, a predator hiding in plain sight. Michael picked up his phone and dialed a number. I need everything you can find on a woman named Melissa. Worked at Frank's place until about 8 months ago. He paused. Yes, that Frank, and I need it fast. As he hung up, Michael caught sight of his reflection in one of the darkened monitors, a stranger's face staring back at him. A man who'd spent so long wearing masks that sometimes he wondered if there was anything left beneath them. Frank Sullivan wiped down the bar counter with practiced efficiency, his mind elsewhere. The man in the expensive suit, Reeves, had piqued his interest. Potential investors with deep pockets didn't wander into Frank's place every day, especially not ones who hinted at understanding the value of local connections. Frank had built his empire carefully over 20 years, starting with this dingy bar in a forgotten neighborhood. To the casual observer, Frank's place was barely profitable. A dive bar serving cheap drinks to a working-class clientele. The perfect front. What few knew was that Frank controlled much of the neighborhood's vice. Gambling in the back rooms, girls available for the right price, product moving through a network of distributors who answered directly to him, all while maintaining the appearance of a struggling small business owner. The arrangement had made Frank wealthy, if not respectable. He owned 6 properties across the city, all purchased through shell companies. He had police officers on his payroll, a city councilman in his pocket, and a judge who owed him significant favors. At 53, Frank had the comfortable arrogance of a man who believed himself untouchable, which is why the investor's interest in the pregnant girl had bothered him. Too many questions about that situation could lead to uncomfortable places. Frank retreated to his office, a small room behind the bar. He unlocked a filing cabinet and pulled out a ledger, one of the few records he kept on paper rather than digitally. Old school, but harder to trace. He flipped to a section marked Personnel and ran his finger down a list of names until he found it. Melissa Kane, 8 months ago. One of his bartenders. Pretty, in her 30s. Smart. Sometimes too smart for her own good. She'd started asking questions about the private rooms upstairs, about some of the girls who came and went. Then she'd disappeared one night, leaving her shift half-finished. Frank had made sure she wouldn't be a problem, the same way he'd dealt with other potential problems over the years. If the pregnant girl was connected to Melissa somehow, Frank closed the ledger, his expression hardening. He'd have to find out more about this Reeves character. And the girl. Across town, Michael sat in his office surrounded by digital breadcrumbs of Frank Sullivan's empire. Financial records showed money moving through a series of businesses: the bar, a laundromat, a small import company, a property management firm, all laundering funds from less legitimate enterprises. Police reports revealed multiple complaints against Frank's place over the years: noise violations, serving minors, allegations of prostitution. Each complaint mysteriously withdrawn or dismissed due to lack of evidence. More disturbing were the missing persons reports. 7 women in the past 3 years, all last seen in the vicinity of Frank's place, all cases gone cold. One name jumped out: Melissa Kane, 34, reported missing by a co-worker 8 months ago. Last known employer, Frank's place. Michael pulled up her driver's license photo. Auburn hair, green eyes, a smile that didn't quite reach those eyes. According to her file, she had no immediate family, parents deceased, no siblings listed, but she did have a cousin, mentioned in a single interview with the investigating officer, a cousin with a teenage daughter. Michael leaned back, connecting the dots. Emma's aunt Melissa. Not truly an aunt, but a cousin of Emma's mother. The timing matched. Melissa disappeared 8 months ago, right around when Emma had lost contact with her. The door to Michael's office slid open, and Mrs. Chen entered with a cup of coffee. "The girl sleeps," she reported, placing the cup on his desk. Her eyes scanned the screens. "Bad man? The worst kind," Michael confirmed. "Hides in plain sight. Uses and discards people. Considers himself untouchable." Mrs. Chen's expression hardened. "Like the men who took my sister." Michael nodded. Years ago, before he'd met her, Mrs. Chen's younger sister had fallen victim to human traffickers. By the time Mrs. Chen had tracked her down, it was too late. That shared history of loss had cemented their unusual partnership. "I think he's running girls," Michael said quietly. "And I think Emma's aunt found out and paid the price." Mrs. Chen studied Melissa's photo on the screen. "The girl doesn't know? She suspects something happened to her aunt, but not this. What will you do?" Michael took a sip of coffee, his mind already mapping out strategies. "I've established contact as a potential investor. He's greedy. He'll want to impress me, bring me deeper into his operation. Dangerous," Mrs. Chen cautioned. "Always is," Michael agreed. "But men like Frank rely on silence and fear. They believe no one will ever touch them because they've bought protection. They get careless." Mrs. Chen nodded, understanding. She'd seen Michael work before, dismantling corrupt businesses and individuals with the same precision with which he constructed his false identities. "And the girl? Emma?" Michael hesitated. "She needs somewhere safe until she delivers. Somewhere. Frank won't find her if he starts looking. She stays here," Mrs. Chen stated firmly. "It wasn't a question. She may not want to. Once she learns what I'm really doing, she has nowhere else," Mrs. Chen interrupted. "And her aunt, she deserves to know the truth." Michael considered this. Involving Emma complicated things. His usual method was to work alone, insulated from emotional entanglements, clean, calculated, impersonal. But Emma was already involved, had been from the moment Frank turned her away. "We'll see what she decides in the morning," he finally said. "For now, let's let her rest." After Mrs. Chen left, Michael continued his research. Frank Sullivan had been operating with impunity for 2 decades. He had connections, protection, and a veil of legitimacy that had kept him safe from serious investigation. But everyone had vulnerabilities. Everyone made mistakes. Michael just needed to find Frank's. He pulled up property records for all of Frank's holdings. One caught his attention: a warehouse in an industrial district, purchased 4 years ago through a shell company. Electrics. Bills showed minimal usage, consistent with storage, but water bills were unusually high for an allegedly empty building. Michael smiled coldly, a lead worth pursuing. As dawn approached, he finally powered down his systems and leaned back in his chair. Taking down Frank Sullivan would be satisfying, not just because of what he'd done to Emma's aunt, but because men like Frank preyed on the vulnerable with no expectation of consequences. Michael had spent his life becoming a ghost, a man with no fixed identity, but there was one consistent thread in his chameleon existence: a deep, personal hatred for those who abused power, perhaps because he'd been powerless once, a child abandoned to a system that had chewed him up and spat him. out. Or perhaps because, as Mrs. Chen often told him, beneath all his masks beat the heart of a good man. The next morning, Michael returned to Frank's place dressed in another impeccable suit, this one navy blue with subtle pinstripes. He carried a leather portfolio and wore the confident expression of a man accustomed to closing deals. Every detail, from his platinum cufflinks to his precisely trimmed beard, projected wealth and authority. Frank was waiting, unusually early for a man who ran a bar. He'd even changed into a sports jacket that strained across his shoulders, a transparent attempt to appear more businesslike. "Mr. Reeves," Frank greeted him, extending a meaty hand. "Appreciate you coming by." Michael shook his hand firmly. "I always follow up on promising opportunities, Frank." They settled at a corner table, away from the few morning employees preparing the bar for the day. Frank ordered coffee for them both, then leaned forward eagerly. "Been thinking about what you said yesterday, about development opportunities in the area. I've got my finger on the pulse of this neighborhood. Know what's available, what's coming up. Who needs to be convinced?" Michael opened his portfolio and removed several documents, sliding them across the table. "I've been looking into potential investments. This area is undervalued, primed for gentrification. The right properties, the right businesses." He tapped the papers. "I see significant potential." Frank glanced at the documents. Market analyses, property valuations, projected returns, all meticulously created by Michael overnight, all completely fabricated, but convincingly detailed. "I'm particularly interested in hospitality and entertainment. Venues," Michael continued smoothly. "Places like this, but upgraded. More exclusive offerings." Frank's eyes gleamed with barely concealed greed. "I might be looking to expand myself. Right connections, right partner." "Exactly." Michael smiled, all white teeth and calculated charm. "But I need to understand the full landscape, the official business climate, and—" He lowered his voice. "The unofficial one." Frank hesitated, studying Michael. "What exactly are you looking for, Mr. Reeves?" "Please, call me Michael." He leaned back, projecting casual confidence. "I'm looking for returns that exceed normal market expectations. I'm looking for businesses that operate outside conventional constraints. And I'm looking for partners who understand discretion." It was bait, carefully crafted to appeal to Frank's nature. The implication of illegal activities without explicitly stating anything that could be construed as entrapment. Frank took it. "I might have some ventures that would interest you. Special clientele, premium experiences. I'd like to see them," Michael said. "All aspects of your operation. If we're to partner, I need to understand what I'm investing in." Frank nodded slowly. "I host a private event tomorrow night. Very exclusive. Might give you a better idea of the premium side of my business. I look forward to it." They spent the next hour discussing the neighborhood, with Frank boasting about his connections and influence. Michael played the role of the impressed investor, asking the right questions, expressing appropriate interest, all while recording every word on a device concealed in his watch. "There is one small issue," Michael said as their meeting concluded. "I have an associate arriving in town today. They'll need to conduct their own assessment of any potential investment." Frank's expression tightened slightly. "What kind of associate?" "Financial advisor. Very discreet. They'll want to review your books, understand the cash flow." "My books are private," Frank said flatly. "I don't share those." Michael shrugged. "Standard procedure for investments of this size, but I understand your concerns." He paused deliberately. "Perhaps we start smaller, a show of good faith from both sides." Frank considered this, visibly relaxing. "What did you have in mind?" "I attend your event tomorrow. If I like what I see, we discuss specific investment opportunities. No need to involve my associate yet." "That could work," Frank agreed, clearly relieved. They shook hands, and Michael departed, satisfied with the morning's work. Frank had revealed enough of his illegal operations to justify continued investigation, while the promise of substantial investment had hooked him completely. Meanwhile, at Michael's mansion, Emma awoke disoriented in the luxurious blue bedroom. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back. The rain, Frank's cruel dismissal, Michael's unexpected intervention. She dressed in clothes Mrs. Chen had provided, simple but new maternity wear that fit surprisingly well, and made her way to the kitchen, following the scent of coffee and breakfast. Mrs. Chen was at the stove, cooking eggs and bacon. "Sit," she instructed without turning around. Baby needs breakfast. Emma sank onto a stool at the counter, one hand automatically cradling her belly. Where's Michael? Business, Mrs. Chen replied, placing a glass of orange juice before Emma. He returned soon. Emma sipped the juice, trying to make sense of her situation. Mrs. Chen, why is Michael helping me? Really? The older woman paused, considering her answer carefully. Michael sees himself in others who have no one. Was he abandoned too? Mrs. Chen nodded once, returning to her cooking. Mother left him at bus station, 7 years old. No note, no money. Emma digested this information, trying to reconcile it with the wealthy, confident man she'd met. What happened to him? Foster homes, some bad, then streets. He learned to survive. Mrs. Chen placed a plate of food before Emma. Eat now, questions later. As Emma ate, she felt a sudden sharp pain in her abdomen. She gasped, one hand flying to her belly. Mrs. Chen was at her side instantly. How long? How frequent? It's nothing, Emma insisted, breathing through the discomfort. Just Braxton Hicks. False contractions. I've been having them for weeks. Mrs. Chen's expression remained concerned. Too early for baby. Almost 8 months, Emma said. But yes, still too early. The pain subsided, and Emma resumed eating, though with less appetite. Mrs. Chen watched her carefully for a few minutes before picking up her phone. I call doctor, she decided. Friend? Discreet. No, really, I'm fine, Emma protested. I don't have insurance or money for a doctor. Mrs. Chen waved away her concerns. Rebecca comes as favor to me. No charge. Before Emma could argue further, Mrs. Chen was speaking rapidly in Mandarin on her phone. After a brief conversation, she hung up with a satisfied nod. She comes in. 1 hour. Now you rest. Emma wanted to resist, but found herself guided to a comfortable sofa in a sunlit sitting room. Mrs. Chen provided a blanket and a cup of herbal tea before disappearing to prepare for the doctor's visit. Left alone, Emma pulled out her phone, still charged, with several missed calls from friends wondering where she'd disappeared to. She sent a quick text to her closest friend, Jen, assuring her she was safe without providing details. As she set the phone down, another contraction seized her. Stronger than the last, Emma closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing as panic fluttered in her chest. Too early, she whispered to her unborn child. Please, not yet, not here. Dr. Rebecca Lin arrived precisely when Mrs. Chen had said she would. She was in her early 40s, with a calm demeanor and quick, assessing eyes that took in Emma's condition at a glance. I'm Dr. Lin, she introduced herself, setting down her medical bag. Mrs. Chen says you're experiencing contractions? Emma nodded, embarrassed by the attention. They're probably just Braxton Hicks. False labor. Let's make sure, Dr. Lin said kindly. She turned to Mrs. Chen. Could we have some privacy? Mrs. Chen nodded and left the room. Dr. Lin helped Emma lie back on the sofa and began a gentle but thorough examination. How far along are you? 32 weeks, Emma replied. Almost 8 months. Dr. Lin frowned slightly. And have you been receiving regular prenatal care? Emma looked away. When I could. The free clinic in my neighborhood. But I've moved around a lot lately. I understand, Dr. Lin said without judgment. She pressed a stethoscope to Emma's abdomen, listening intently. Good strong heartbeat. That's excellent. She continued her examination, asking questions about Emma's symptoms, diet and living situation. Emma answered honestly, finding the doctor's manner reassuring. You're experiencing what we call threatened preterm labor, Dr. Lin finally explained. Your body is preparing, but it's too early. The good news is we can usually stop it at this stage. She reached into her bag and removed several medications. This will help relax the uterine muscles, and you need complete bed rest for at least 72 hours. Emma's heart sank. I don't have anywhere to stay that long. Dr. Lin raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Chen seemed to indicate you were staying here, just for last night, Emma clarified. I barely know Michael. I can't impose. Emma, Dr. Lin interrupted gently. Your baby's health has to come first right now. Moving around, stress, inadequate rest. These all increase the risk of preterm delivery. Tears welled in Emma's eyes. I know. I'm trying. My best, but you said you were looking for your aunt, Dr. Lin asked, changing the subject as she prepared an injection of medication. Emma nodded, wincing slightly as the doctor administered the shot. Melissa Kane. She worked at Frank's place. That bar where Michael found me. Dr. Lin's hand stilled for a moment. Melissa Kane, auburn hair, green eyes, about 5'6". Emma looked up in surprise. You knew her? I volunteered at a women's health clinic downtown. Dr. Lynn explained, her expression careful. Melissa used to bring girls there. Young women who needed help. No questions asked. Hope flared in Emma's chest. When did you last see her? About 8 months ago. Dr. Lynn admitted. She stopped coming suddenly. I asked about her, but no one seemed to know what had happened. That's when she disappeared, Emma whispered. I've been trying to find her. Dr. Lynn packed away her medical supplies, her movements deliberate. The girls Melissa brought in, some were very young. Many didn't speak English well. Some showed signs of difficult circumstances. Emma frowned, processing this information. What kind of difficult circumstances? Dr. Lynn met her eyes directly. The kind that suggested they weren't free to come and go as they pleased. The implication hung in the air between them. Emma felt cold suddenly, despite the warm room. You think she was helping trafficked girls? I think Melissa was trying to help vulnerable women, Dr. Lynn said carefully, and I think it may have put her in danger. Before Emma could respond, the door opened and Michael entered. He'd loosened his tie and removed his suit jacket, but still carried himself with the same controlled precision. His eyes flicked from Emma to the doctor, assessing the situation. Dr. Lynn, he greeted her with a nod. Thank you for coming. Michael, the doctor acknowledged. I didn't realize this was your home. You two know each other? Emma asked, surprised. Rebecca has helped me with discreet medical situations before, Michael explained vaguely. Dr. Lynn turned to Michael, her expression professional. Emma needs complete bed rest for at least 72 hours. She's experiencing threatened preterm labor. Movement, stress, inadequate nutrition, all could trigger early delivery. Michael nodded, absorbing this information. She'll stay here. Mrs. Chen will ensure she has everything she needs. I can't, Emma began to protest. You can, and you will, Michael cut her off, his tone leaving no room for argument. Your baby's health comes first. Dr. Lynn packed up her bag. I've given her medication to relax the uterine muscles. She'll need another dose in 12 hours. She handed a small packet to Michael. Call me if the contractions increase in frequency or intensity. As the doctor prepared to leave, Michael walked her to the door. Emma couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language suggested a familiarity beyond casual acquaintance. Mrs. Chen returned with a tray of tea and light food. Doctor says rest, so you rest. Emma accepted the tea, her mind spinning with new information. Mrs. Chen, did you know my aunt? Melissa, the older woman, shook her head. No, but Michael searches for her now. Searches for her? Why? Mrs. Chen's expression softened with sympathy. To find what happened. Michael returned, pulling a chair closer to where Emma reclined on the sofa. His expression had changed. The smooth charm replaced by something more focused, almost predatory. Dr. Lynn told me she knew your aunt, he said without preamble. Emma nodded. She said Melissa brought girls to her clinic. Girls who needed help. Did you know about this side of your aunt's activities? No, Emma admitted. But it sounds like her. She always looked out for people who couldn't look out for themselves. Michael was quiet for a moment, studying Emma with an unreadable expression. I believe your aunt discovered something at Frank's place. Something dangerous. And I think that's why she disappeared. Emma's hand instinctively moved to her belly, as if to shield her baby from this dark revelation. What are you saying? I'm saying Frank Sullivan isn't just a bar owner, Michael replied, his voice low and controlled. He's involved in human trafficking, and I think your aunt found out. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Emma felt her chest tighten, a mixture of fear and grief washing over her. You can't know that for sure, she whispered. Not yet, Michael agreed. But I will. He leaned forward, his intensity almost tangible. I'm going to find out exactly what happened to your aunt, Emma, and I'm going to make Frank pay for it. Emma stared at him, suddenly seeing beyond the expensive clothes and confident demeanor to something harder, colder. Who are you really, Michael? He smiled without humor. Someone who makes sure people like Frank don't get away with destroying lives. In that moment, Emma realized she'd stumbled into something much larger and more dangerous than a simple search for her missing aunt. And the man sitting across from her was far more complex than the Good Samaritan who'd rescued her from. The rain. Michael jerked awake, his heart racing. The dream had been vivid. A bus station in Ohio. gray winter light filtering through dirty windows. The hard plastic bench where she'd told him to wait. "Just 5 minutes, Mikey. I need to get our tickets." His mother never came back. 7 years old, a small backpack containing everything he owned, and the slow, terrible realization that she wasn't coming back, that she'd left him there deliberately. He glanced at the clock. 3:17 a.m. Sleep wouldn't return now. It never did after these dreams. Michael rose silently and made his way to the kitchen, moving through the darkened house with practiced ease. Light was already on, a soft glow spilling from the doorway. Emma sat at the counter, a mug of tea cradled between her hands. She looked up as he entered. "Can't sleep either." Michael paused, momentarily caught off guard. In his own home, he was accustomed to solitude. "Just getting some water." Emma watched him fill a glass from the filtered tap. "You have nightmares too?" The question was unexpected. Direct in a way that bypassed his usual defenses, Michael found himself answering honestly. "Sometimes. Mine are about being trapped," Emma said softly. "In my parents' house, with them praying over me like I'm possessed, or in a hospital, with doctors taking my baby away." She placed a protective hand on her belly. "What are yours about?" Michael hesitated, unused to personal questions. "Being left behind," he finally said, the words feeling strange in his mouth. Emma nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Mrs. Chen told me about your mom at the bus station." A flicker of irritation. Mrs. Chen rarely shared his personal history. "She shouldn't have. I think she wanted me to understand why you're helping me," Emma explained. She studied him in the gentle kitchen light. "How old were you?" 7, Michael replied, the single word carrying the weight of decades-old pain. "What happened afterward?" Michael leaned against the counter, keeping physical distance between them. "Foster care. 6 homes in 3 years. Some better than others." The clinical summary omitted the abuse, the hunger, the lessons in survival learned too young. And then I left," Michael said simply. "Decided I'd rather take my chances on my own." Emma's eyes widened. "How old were you then?" 10. A moment of silence as she absorbed this. "That's so young. How did you survive?" Michael's mouth curved in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "By becoming whoever I needed to be, to get what I needed. A con man, a survivor," he corrected. "I learned that people believe what they want to believe, that appearance matters more than reality, that everyone has an angle." He sipped his water. "Valuable lessons." Emma considered him thoughtfully. "Is that why you're going after Frank? Because he has an angle?" "I'm going after Frank because he's predator who thinks he's untouchable," Michael replied, his voice hardening. "Because he uses and discards people like your aunt when they become inconvenient." His phone buzzed on the counter. Frank's name flashed on the screen. Michael glanced at Emma before answering. "Frank, it's late." "Not too late for business." Frank's voice came through, slightly slurred with alcohol. "Tomorrow night's event. I need you there early. 7 sharp." Michael's expression remained neutral. "Any particular reason?" "Got some VIPs coming. Want to introduce you. Could be mutually beneficial. I'll be there." "And Reeves?" Frank added. "Dressed to impress. These aren't your average clients." The call ended. Michael set the phone down, mind already analyzing the implications. Frank was accelerating their relationship, eager to showcase his investor to important connections. It was an opportunity and a risk. "You're really going through with this," Emma observed, watching his face. "Investigating Frank. For my aunt." "Not just for your aunt," Michael admitted. "Frank's been operating with impunity for years. People like that, they need to be stopped, even if it's dangerous. Especially then." Michael finished his water. "You should get back to bed. Doctor's orders." Emma didn't move. "I want to help." Michael raised an eyebrow. "You're 8 months pregnant and on bed rest." "It's my aunt," Emma insisted. "I have a right to be involved. This isn't a movie, Emma. What I do, it's methodical, calculated. Emotions get people hurt. I'm already hurt," she countered. "Melissa was the only person in my family who ever really saw me, who loved me unconditionally." Her voice caught. "If something happened to her because of Frank, I need to know. I need to help make it right." Michael studied her, the determined set of her jaw, the intelligence in her eyes. Despite her youth and vulnerability, there was a core of strength there. "Still, the best way you can help right now is by taking care of yourself and your baby," he said firmly. "Stay here. Rest. Let me handle Frank." Emma looked like she wanted to argue further, but a flicker of discomfort crossed her face. Her hand moved to her belly. "Another contraction?" Michael asked, immediately alert. "Just a small one," she assured him. "They're getting better with the medication." Relief softened his expression momentarily. "Then bed. Now." Emma slid off the stool with a sigh. "You're bossy for someone who's technically a criminal." A surprised laugh escaped him. "And you're stubborn for someone who's technically a runaway." For a moment, the air between them lightened. Then Emma's expression grew serious again. "Promise me something? Depends what it is. Don't keep me in the dark. About my aunt. About what you find." Michael hesitated, weighing the request against his instinct for compartmentalization. "I'll tell you what I can. When I can. But my priority is keeping you safe." Emma nodded, accepting the compromise. "Good night, Michael." "Good night, Emma." He watched her leave, her steps careful, one hand always supporting her belly. When she was gone, Michael turned to the sophisticated coffee machine and began brewing a cup. Sleep was out of the question. Now, with Frank's unexpected call and the lingering ghosts of his dream, his phone buzzed again, not a call this time, but an alert. One of his searches had found something. Michael opened the notification and felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. Melissa Kane's phone, inactive for 8 months, had just been used to send a text message. Either Melissa was alive and reaching out, or someone wanted it to appear that way. Either possibility changed everything. The following evening, Michael stood before the mirror adjusting his tie, a deep burgundy against crisp white. The suit was bespoke, Italian wool in charcoal gray. A platinum watch gleamed at his wrist, housing not just Swiss craftsmanship, but surveillance technology that would record every conversation. Mrs. Chen entered his dressing room with a small case. "Wire," she stated, opening it to reveal a nearly invisible earpiece and microphone. "Not tonight," Michael decided. "Frank's paranoid. He'll have security scanning for devices." Mrs. Chen frowned. "Too dangerous alone. I'll have the watch. And this." He showed her a fountain pen in his breast pocket. Another recording device. Multiple redundancies, as always. She nodded reluctantly and handed him a small pill. "Panic button. Swallow if trouble. GPS activates in stomach." Michael pocketed it with a half smile. "Always prepared. Always careful," she corrected firmly. Downstairs, Emma was resting on the sofa in the living room, a book open on her lap. She looked up as Michael entered, her eyes widening slightly at his transformation. Gone was the casual man from the kitchen last night. In his place stood someone else. Entirely. Polished, powerful, intimidating. "You look," she searched for the right word, "different. That's the point," Michael replied, checking his cufflinks. "Michael Reeves, international investor, expects certain standards." Emma set her book aside. "You're meeting with Frank tonight? At his exclusive event. Time to see what he's really selling." Concern flickered across her face. "What if it's dangerous?" "It's always dangerous," Michael said matter-of-factly. "But men like Frank are predictable. They want to impress, to prove their importance. That makes them careless. And if he discovers who you really are," Michael's expression hardened. "He won't." A moment of silence stretched between them. Finally, Emma asked, "Have you found anything?" "About my aunt?" Michael hesitated. He hadn't told her about the text message yet, unsure if it would give her false hope. Nothing concrete, but tonight might change that. Mrs. Chen appeared with a light dinner. "For Emma." "Eat," she instructed. "Doctor comes again tomorrow." Emma dutifully accepted the tray, but kept her attention on Michael. "Be careful," she said quietly. Something about her genuine concern touched him unexpectedly. He nodded once, then headed for the garage. Frank's place looked different at night. The neon sign buzzed with electric blue intensity, and a line of people waited behind a velvet rope. A large bouncer controlled access, selecting who could enter based on criteria that had nothing to do with the fire code. Michael bypassed the line completely. "Reeves," he told the bouncer. "Frank's expecting me." The man checked a list, then nodded. "Back room. Through the bar, door on the right." Inside, the main area of Frank's place was crowded and dimly lit. Weekend patrons shouted over pulsing music, while harried bartenders poured drinks at premium prices. Nothing unusual for a popular bar, but Michael knew this was merely the public face of Frank's operation. He made his way through the crowd, cataloging details. Security cameras positioned strategically, bouncers who were too well built and alert to be mere crowd control, waitresses who looked too young, too wary. The door to the back room was unmarked, but guarded by another large man who nodded at Michael's approach. "Mr. Reeves, Mr. Sullivan is waiting." The back room revealed a different world entirely. Plush furnishings, subdued lighting, expensive artwork on the walls. About a dozen men in expensive suits mingled, drinking top-shelf liquor. Frank stood at the center, holding court. "Reeves!" Frank called out, gesturing him over. "Right on time," Michael approached with calculated confidence, accepting the drink Frank pressed into his hand. "Impressive setup, Frank. This is just the beginning," Frank assured him, lowering his voice. "The real event starts upstairs in an hour. Very exclusive, very special." Michael nodded, sipping his drink, looking forward to it. Frank introduced him around the room: a city councilman, a real estate developer, the owner of a construction company, a judge, men with power and influence, all connected to Frank in ways that explained how he'd operated unchecked for so long. Michael played his role perfectly, the interested investor with money to burn and few moral qualms. He asked the right questions, dropped the right hints about his own shadowy connections abroad, all while his watch and pen recorded every incriminating word. An hour later, Frank approached again. "Ready for the main event?" Michael nodded, setting down his barely touched second drink. "Lead the way." Frank guided him through another door and up a narrow staircase. 2 more security guards stood at the top, checking everyone who ascended. One ran a handheld scanner over Michael, checking for recording devices or weapons. For a tense moment, Michael wondered if his specialized equipment would be detected, but the guard nodded, and Frank clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on into the real moneymaker." The upper floor had been renovated into a series of private rooms surrounding a central lounge area. In the lounge, young women in revealing outfits circulated among the same powerful men from downstairs, now joined by several more who hadn't been present earlier. Michael's expression revealed nothing, but internally, his suspicions were confirmed. This was a high-end prostitution operation, with girls who looked barely legal, if that. Quite the enterprise, Michael commented neutrally. Frank grinned, misinterpreting his restraint as cool appraisal. "Only the best for our clients. These girls are exclusive. You won't find them walking the streets or in some massage parlor." "Where do you find them?" Michael asked, keeping his tone casual. "Various sources. Some local, some imported." Frank's smile turned predatory. "Girls who need work, girls who need visas, girls who need to pay off family debts. We provide a service for them too. Human trafficking." Exactly as Michael had suspected. His hand tightened imperceptibly around his drink. "And the clients pay well for this service? Membership fees, hourly rates, special requests. It all adds up." Frank gestured around the room. "This operation clears 7 figures annually, all cash. And that's just this location." Michael raised an eyebrow. "You have others?" Frank nodded, warming to his subject. 3 sites across the city. Different themes, different girls. Some clients prefer variety. "Impressive diversification," Michael commented, "though it must come with significant risks." "Managed risks," Frank corrected. "The right people are taken care of." He nodded toward the city councilman, now disappearing into a private room with a young Asian woman. "Protection costs money, but it's worth every penny." "And competition? Other players in the market?" Frank's expression darkened. "We deal with competition permanently." The implication was clear. Michael thought of Melissa Kane, last seen at Frank's place 8 months ago, a bartender who might have discovered what happened upstairs after closing time. "I'd like to see your other locations," Michael said. "If we're discussing potential investment, I need to understand the full scope of operations." Frank studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I can arrange that. But first, tonight, consider it a sample of what we offer." He gestured to the girls. "On the house. My way of welcoming a new partner." It was a test, Michael realized, to see if he was genuinely interested in the business or might be squeamish about its nature. "Generous," Michael replied smoothly, "but I prefer to keep business and pleasure separate until the deals are signed. Professional discipline." Frank seemed to approve of this answer. "A man who doesn't mix business with pleasure. I respect that." He checked his watch. "I need to handle something downstairs. Feel free to look around, get a feel for the operation. We'll talk specifics later." As Frank departed, Michael circulated the room, gathering intelligence while maintaining his cover. He noted cameras in discrete locations, security protocols, entry and exit points, all while engaging in casual conversation with Frank's clients, several of whom were eager to boast about their connections and influence. In one corner, Michael spotted a familiar face, Officer Daniels from the city's Vice Squad, the same officer whose name appeared on multiple dismissed complaints against Frank's place. The officer was off duty, accepting a drink from one of the girls with practiced familiarity. The corruption ran deep. Michael made a mental note to add Daniels to his growing list of Frank's accomplices. As he moved through the room, Michael caught fragments of conversation that painted an even darker picture of Frank's operation. References to new merchandise arriving next week, a special auction for premium selections, discussion of a warehouse facility where girls were processed before being distributed to various locations. Each piece of information was carefully filed away, recorded by his devices, building the case that would eventually bring down Frank's empire. But beneath his cool facade, Michael felt a growing rage. These men, respected community leaders by day, laughed and drank while young women were exploited and abused. And somewhere in this web of corruption and cruelty was the truth about what had happened to Emma's aunt, a truth he was now more determined than ever to uncover. Emma couldn't sleep. Despite Dr. Lin's medication and Mrs. Chen's herbal teas, restlessness kept her tossing in the luxurious blue bedroom. Her mind raced with thoughts of her Aunt Melissa and whatever dangerous truth Michael might be uncovering. At Frank's place, finally giving up on sleep, she eased herself out of bed. The mansion was silent, with only security lights illuminating the hallways. Mrs. Chen had retired hours ago, and Michael hadn't returned. Emma made her way to the kitchen for water, then found herself drawn to Michael's office. The door was closed, but not locked. She hesitated, hand on the knob, aware she was crossing a boundary. But concern for her aunt overrode her hesitation. The office was meticulously organized. A large desk with multiple monitors, filing cabinets, a comfortable chair. Nothing personal adorned the space. No photos, mementos, or art that might reveal anything about the man who worked here. Emma scanned the room, uncertain what she was looking for. Her eyes landed on a sleek laptop on the desk. She sat down and opened it, expecting to find it password protected. To her surprise, it powered, on immediately, displaying a dashboard of ongoing investigations. One folder was labeled Sullivan Frank's Place. Heart racing. Emma clicked on it. Documents appeared. Property records, financial statements, police reports, and a subfolder labeled Missing Persons. With trembling fingers, she opened it to find 7 files, each named for a woman. The last one read Kane Melissa. Emma opened her aunt's file, breath catching as Melissa's driver's license photo appeared on screen. The familiar face, auburn hair, green eyes, the small scar above her left eyebrow from a childhood accident, brought tears to Emma's eyes. The file contained everything Michael had uncovered. Melissa's employment history, the missing person, report filed by her co-worker, interview transcripts with police, and something else, a timeline Michael had constructed of Melissa's last known movements. According to a witness statement, Melissa had been working a Thursday night shift when she'd gone upstairs to deliver drinks to the private party. She never returned to the main bar. Her purse and coat were found in the employee locker room. Her car remained in the parking lot for 3 days before being towed. Emma scrolled through the documents, a cold dread building in her chest. There were newspaper clippings about other missing women, all young, all vulnerable in some way, all last seen near Frank's businesses. Another folder caught her eye. Warehouse. She opened it to find surveillance photos of an industrial building, property records showing it belonged to one of Frank's shell companies, and utility bills showing unusual water usage for a supposedly empty storage facility. A handwritten note. In Michael's precise script, possible holding location. Emma leaned back, feeling physically ill. The implications were clear and horrifying. Frank wasn't just a cruel bar owner. He was involved in human trafficking, and her aunt had likely stumbled onto his operation. The sound of the front door opening startled her. Michael was back. Emma quickly closed the laptop. But instead of leaving the office, she waited, determination hardening within her. Michael appeared in the doorway moments later, still in his suit from the evening, though his tie was loosened, and his expression grim. He paused when he saw her, but didn't seem surprised. "Find what you were looking for?" he asked quietly. "Is it true?" Emma demanded, one hand protectively covering her belly. "The warehouse, the missing women, is Frank trafficking people?" Michael studied her for a long moment before nodding once. "Yes, and my aunt? I believe she discovered what was happening upstairs at Frank's place," Michael said carefully, "and that made her dangerous to him." Emma closed her eyes, a wave of grief washing over her. Is she dead? I don't know for certain, Michael admitted, but last night, her phone was activated for the first time in 8 months. A text was sent. Emma's eyes flew open. What? To who? What did it say? To a number that no longer exists. The message was WH32. What does that mean? Michael moved further into the office, loosening his tie completely. I believe WH stands for warehouse. The number could be a location inside the building. A room, perhaps. Hope flickered painfully in Emma's chest. So she could be alive? Being held somewhere? It's possible, Michael allowed. But it's also possible someone else has her phone. We have to find out, Emma insisted, rising awkwardly from the chair. We have to check the warehouse. I'm already working on it, Michael assured her. But I need to move carefully. Frank has protection. Police. Local officials. If I make one wrong move, evidence disappears. And any chance of finding Melissa goes with it. I can't just sit here doing nothing. Emma's voice rose with frustration. She's my family, the only real family I have left. A contraction seized her suddenly, stronger than before, doubling her over. Michael was at her side instantly, supporting her. This is exactly why you need to stay here, he said firmly. Your baby needs you calm and safe. The contraction subsided, leaving Emma breathless and frightened. Something's wrong, she whispered. That was different. Stronger. Michael helped her to a nearby chair, already reaching for his phone. I'm calling Dr. Lin. No, Emma gasped as another contraction hit. No time, hospital. Michael didn't argue. He scooped Emma into his arms with surprising strength and carried her swiftly through the house, calling for Mrs. Chen as he went. The older woman appeared immediately, already dressed despite the late hour. One look at Emma's contorted face. Told her everything. Car ready, she stated, hurrying ahead to the garage. Michael placed Emma carefully in the back seat of his sedan, then slid behind the wheel. Mrs. Chen climbed in beside Emma, supporting her. Deep breaths, Mrs. Chen instructed, demonstrating the pattern. Like this. Emma tried to follow, but panic was setting in. It's too early, she repeated between contractions. Almost 8 months. Too early. Michael drove with controlled urgency, his usual calm demeanor replaced by focused intensity. 8 months is viable, he said, meeting Emma's eyes in the rearview mirror. Modern NICUs can support babies from 28 weeks with excellent outcomes. The fact that he knew this surprised Emma, even through her pain. You researched premature births? A slight hesitation. I research everything. They reached the hospital in record time. Michael pulled up to the emergency entrance and was out of the car immediately, returning seconds later with medical staff and a wheelchair. As they transferred Emma from the car, she grabbed Michael's arm. My aunt, she gasped. Promise me you'll find her. Michael covered her hand with his own. I promise. Emma was whisked away through automatic doors, Mrs. Chen following closely. Michael watched them disappear, his expression unreadable. His phone buzzed. Frank Sullivan's name appeared on the screen. Where'd you go, Reeves? Frank's voice slurred slightly with alcohol. Party's just getting started. Family emergency. Michael replied smoothly. My apologies. Family? Thought you were a lone wolf. Distant cousin in town. Medical situation. Frank grunted, seemingly accepting the excuse. Tomorrow then. Lunch at the club. Meet the rest of the partners. Looking forward to it. Michael lied. As he ended the call, Michael's gaze returned to the hospital entrance. The timing couldn't be worse. Emma needed him here, but Melissa, if she was still alive, needed him to follow this lead before it went cold. For the first time in years, Michael found himself torn between the mission and something else, something that felt uncomfortably like emotional attachment. The hospital waiting room was a study in contradictions, sterile yet chaotic, quiet yet tense. Michael sat rigidly in an uncomfortable chair, his expensive suit incongruous among the other worried families in casual clothes. Mrs. Chen had gone, with Emma into the examination area, leaving Michael alone with his thoughts and the incessant buzzing of his phone. Frank had called 3 more times. Michael had let the calls go to voicemail, but he knew ignoring Frank for long would raise suspicions. The carefully constructed persona of Michael Reeves, international investor, wouldn't abandon a lucrative business opportunity without explanation. But for once in his life, the con wasn't his priority. Mr. Reeves? Michael looked up to see Dr. Lin approaching. She had changed into hospital scrubs, her expression professional but concerned. How is she? Michael asked, rising to meet the doctor. We've managed to stop the contractions for now, Dr. Lin explained, but Emma's showing signs of preeclampsia, high blood pressure, protein in her urine. It's a serious condition that can affect both mother and baby. What does that mean for her? It means she needs to stay here under observation. If her condition worsens, we may need to deliver the baby early. Dr. Lin studied him curiously. You seem very concerned for someone who just met her. Michael ignored the implicit question. Can I see her? Briefly. She needs rest. Dr. Lin led him through double doors into the maternity ward. She's been asking about you. And about her aunt. Michael nodded but offered no explanation. Dr. Lin didn't press, instead stopping outside a private room. 10 minutes, she instructed. She's been sedated, so she may be groggy. Inside, Emma lay in a hospital bed, looking smaller and younger than her 18 years. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking her vital signs and the baby's heartbeat. Mrs. Chen sat beside her, holding her hand and murmuring reassurances in a mixture of English and Mandarin. Emma's eyes fluttered open as Michael approached. You're still here, she whispered, surprise evident in her voice. Of course. Michael took the chair Mrs. Chen vacated for him. How are you feeling? Scared, Emma admitted, her hand resting protectively on her belly. Dr. Lin says the baby might come early. You're in good hands, Michael assured her. This hospital has an excellent NICU. Emma studied his face. You need to go, don't you? To follow the lead about Aunt Melissa, Michael hesitated, struck by her perceptiveness. It can wait. No, it can't, Emma insisted, suddenly more alert. If that text really came from her, she needs help now. Her eyes filled with tears. Please find her, Michael. I can't lose her too. Before Michael could respond, a nurse entered to check Emma's vitals. Everything looks stable, she reported with a reassuring smile. Try to rest, dear. As the nurse worked, Michael noticed a small tattoo on her wrist, partially concealed by her watch but distinctive. A butterfly with a broken wing. Something about it triggered his memory. Have we met before? He asked casually. The nurse glanced up, her expression changing subtly as she recognized him. No, sir, I don't think so. But there was fear in her eyes, a wariness Michael had seen countless times in people with secrets to protect. After she left, Michael turned to Mrs. Chen. Stay with Emma. I need to check something. He found Dr. Lin at the nurse's station reviewing charts. The nurse who was just in Emma's room, he said without preamble. What's her name? Dr. Lin looked up, surprised by his intensity. Sophia. Sophia Diaz. She's one of our best L&D nurses. Why? Instead of answering directly, Michael asked, how long has she worked here? About 6 months, Dr. Lin replied, her professional demeanor giving way to suspicion. Michael, what's this about? Michael lowered his voice. The butterfly tattoo on her wrist. I've seen it before in a case file. It's a marking used by traffickers. A broken wing means the person is considered owned. Dr. Lin's eyes widened. Are you suggesting Sophia is not a willing participant? Michael clarified quickly. A victim, possibly placed here to work. Off a debt to her traffickers. That's a serious accusation, Dr. Lin said, though doubt had crept into her expression. I need to speak with her, privately. Dr. Lin hesitated, then nodded. Staff lounge. I'll have her meet you there. The staff lounge was empty when Sophia entered 10 minutes later. She froze when she saw Michael, her hand automatically moving to cover her wrist. I'm not here to hurt you, Michael said quietly, remaining seated to appear less threatening. I want to help. I don't know what you're talking about, Sophia replied, her accent betraying her Colombian origins. I need to get back to my patients. The butterfly marks you as belonging to the Alvarez network, Michael said, but you're working in a hospital now, not one of their clubs or massage parlors. That's unusual. Sophia's facade cracked, fear and resignation washing over her face. How do you know about the Alvarezes? I know about a lot of things, Michael replied, including their connection to Frank Sullivan. At Frank's name, Sophia flinched visibly. I cannot talk about this. They'll know. No one will know, Michael assured her. I can help you, Sophia, but I need information. About Frank's operation. About a woman named Melissa Kane. Something flickered in Sophia's eyes at the mention of Melissa. The red-haired woman? The bartender? Michael's pulse quickened. You know her? Sophia glanced nervously at the door. She helped me. When I was first brought to Frank's place, she gave me money, tried to help me escape. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But they caught me, punished me. moved me here to work instead because I have nursing training. Is Melissa still alive? Michael asked, keeping his voice gentle despite his urgency. Tears filled Sophia's eyes. Last time I saw her was 2 months ago, at the warehouse. She was not good. They hurt her badly for helping girls escape. But she's alive? You're certain? Sophia nodded. In the special section, where they keep the troublemakers. BUH 32, Michael said. What does that mean? Sophia's eyes widened in surprise. Warehouse room 32. How did you know? A message was sent from Melissa's phone. Just those letters and numbers. Impossible, Sophia whispered. Phones are never allowed. They would kill her if they caught her with one. Unless Melissa had found a way, Michael thought, or unless someone wanted to lure him to the warehouse. Either possibility required immediate action. Sophia, I'm going to shut down Frank's operation, Michael said, his voice hardening with resolve. But I need evidence. Documentation of what they're doing. Who's involved? Sophia shook her head frantically. I cannot help you. They will kill my family in Bogota. They have my sister's children. I understand, Michael assured her. But when this is over, I can help get your family to safety. I have resources, connections. Doubt warred with desperate hope on Sophia's face. Why would you help me? Who are you really? It was a question Michael rarely answered truthfully, but something about Emma's situation, about Melissa's courage, about Sophia's resilience, compelled honesty. Someone who was once powerless against people who thought they could take whatever they wanted, he said quietly. Now I make sure they face consequences. Sophia studied him for a long moment, then reached a decision. From her scrubs pocket, she withdrew a small USB drive. Patient records, she explained in a whisper. Girls brought in with injuries, overdoses, pregnancy complications, all from Frank's places, all with false names, no insurance. Dr. Kaufman treats them, doesn't ask questions, gets paid cash. Michael accepted the drive, understanding its value immediately. This is important evidence. Sophia, thank you. Will it be enough to stop them? It's a start, Michael said. But I need more. I need to find Melissa and the others. Sophia hesitated, then added, delivery tonight. New girls coming. Frank's security man, Victor, he brings them through emergency entrance. Service hallway, north side of building. Midnight. The information was a gift beyond price. A chance to catch Frank's operation in the act. Michael carefully committed the details to memory. Stay with your regular routine, he instructed Sophia. Don't do anything different. I'll handle the rest. As Sophia left, Dr. Lin entered, her expression questioning. Well, you have a human trafficking victim working in your hospital, Michael confirmed grimly. And there will be more coming through tonight. Midnight, emergency entrance. Dr. Lin paled. My God, should we call the police? Not yet, Michael cautioned. Some of them are involved. I need to document everything first. Build an airtight case. What are you going to do? Michael checked his watch. 4 hours until midnight. I'm going to be here when they arrive, and I'm going to follow them back to where they're keeping the others. That's incredibly dangerous, Dr. Lin protested. So is doing nothing, Michael replied, already formulating his plan. Can I count on your discretion for a few more hours? Dr. Lin hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. For the victim's sake, but if anyone gets hurt, I'm not the one who hurts people. Michael interrupted, his voice suddenly cold. That's Frank's specialty. Emma drifted in and out of consciousness, the medication making her thoughts fuzzy. Each time she woke, Mrs. Chen was there, a steady presence in the sterile hospital room. Once she thought she saw Michael standing by the window, his silhouette, sharp against the city lights, but when she blinked, he was gone. Dr. Lin visited regularly, checking monitors and adjusting medications. Your blood pressure is stabilizing, she informed Emma during one lucid period. That's very good. And the baby's heartbeat remains strong. When can I go home? Emma asked drowsily. Dr. Lin's expression turned gentle. Not for a while, I'm afraid. We need to monitor you closely. Preeclampsia can be serious. Emma nodded, too exhausted to argue. Her hand drifted to her belly, feeling the reassuring movements of her child. Despite everything, her parents' rejection, Jake's abandonment, her aunt's disappearance, this baby had become her anchor, her reason to keep fighting. Has Michael found my aunt? She asked Mrs. Chen when they were alone. The older woman shook her head. He follows leads, will not stop until he finds her. He barely knows me, Emma murmured. Why is he doing all this? Mrs. Chen adjusted Emma's blanket with maternal care. Michael sees himself in you, alone, abandoned, but strong. Emma considered this. He told me he was left at a bus station when he was 7. Yes. Very bad time for him. Mrs. Chen's expression darkened with old anger. Foster homes worse. Can he live on streets? Learn to survive by becoming other people. A con man, Emma supplied. A survivor, Mrs. Chen corrected firmly. And now, he helps others survive too. The conversation was interrupted by a nurse, not Sophia this time, coming to check Emma's vitals. As she worked, Emma found herself wondering about Michael's true motivations. Was this just another con for him, or something more personal? She drifted back to sleep with these questions unanswered. Meanwhile, Michael had transformed himself yet again. Gone was the polished investor in expensive suits. In his place stood a hospital orderly in blue scrubs, ID badge clipped to his pocket, wheeling a laundry cart through the quiet corridors of the midnight shift. He positioned himself near the emergency entrance, pretending to sort linens while maintaining a clear view of the service hallway Sophia had indicated. His watch showed 11:57 p.m. At precisely midnight, a van with a cleaning company logo pulled up to the service entrance. The driver remained inside while a bulky man in a security uniform emerged from the passenger side and scanned the area before opening the side door. 4 young women stepped out, looking disoriented and frightened. All were in their late teens or early 20s, with the hollow-eyed look of those who had endured a long journey under difficult conditions. The security guard, Victor, according to Sophia, gripped one girl's arm roughly when she moved too. Slowly, Michael kept his head down, appearing busy with his task while capturing everything on a small camera concealed in his badge. The girls were hustled through a service door, Victor following close behind. Abandoning his cart, Michael slipped through the door after them, maintaining a careful distance. The group moved through a maintenance corridor and into a service elevator. Michael waited until the elevator doors closed, then checked the floor indicator. They were heading to the basement. Instead of following immediately, Michael found a stairwell and descended quickly. He emerged in the hospital basement just in time to see Victor, leading the girls through another door marked Authorized Personnel. Only, Michael waited 30 seconds, then approached the door. It required a key card for entry. He removed a small device from his pocket, a card reader bypass, and held it against the electronic lock. The light turned green, and the door clicked open. Beyond lay a long corridor that connected to what appeared to be an underground parking structure, likely used for deliveries and staff. Victor and the girls were just disappearing into a van, parked near an exit ramp. Michael moved swiftly to his own vehicle, parked strategically nearby. As the van pulled out, he followed at a safe distance. Headlights dimmed. The van wound through the city's industrial district, eventually turning into a fenced compound surrounding a large warehouse, the same one Michael had identified in his research. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, and security cameras monitored the entrances. Michael parked several blocks away and continued on foot, using the shadows for cover. Years of operating outside the law had taught him how to move unseen, how to find weaknesses in security systems. He circled the warehouse, noting guard positions and camera coverage. A loading dock on the east side appeared to be a blind spot. The camera there was angled incorrectly, leaving a narrow approach path unmonitored. Michael was about to make his move when his phone vibrated. Frank Sullivan's name flashed on the EI screen. He answered, keeping his voice low. "Frank, it's late. Where the hell have you been?" Frank demanded, anger evident even through the phone. "You missed our meeting, not returning my calls." "Family emergency?" Michael replied smoothly. "My cousin's condition worsened. I've been at the hospital all day." "Bullshit," Frank snarled. "I had you checked out, Reeves, or whatever your real name is. Your investment firm doesn't exist. The addresses you gave me are empty offices." Michael's mind raced, calculating options. His cover was blown, but how much did Frank actually know? "You've been asking questions about me," Frank continued. "About my business. About missing women. You think I don't have sources in the police department? That I don't know when someone's digging?" "Frank," Michael began, but was cut off. "You know what happens to people who stick their noses in my business? Ask your pregnant little friend. Ask her aunt." Ice formed in Michael's veins. "What about Emma?" Frank's laugh was ugly. "You left her at the hospital, didn't you? With only that old Chinese woman for protection? Not very smart." The threat was clear. Michael was already running back to his car when Frank added, "You have 1 hour to bring me what you've collected. All of it. Or the girl has an unfortunate complication. Understand? The call ended. Michael started his car, tires squealing as he pulled away from the curb. He'd underestimated Frank's connections, his paranoia, a rookie mistake, born of emotional involvement. Now Emma was in danger because of him. He dialed Mrs. Chen, cursing, when the call went straight to voicemail. Next, he tried Dr. Lin's personal number. "Michael?" she answered, sounding puzzled by the late call. "Check on Emma," he ordered without preamble. "Now. Frank knows about her. He's threatened her." "What? How? Just check on her," Michael interrupted, pushing his car faster through the empty streets. "And call hospital security. Frank has someone inside." He ended the call, focusing on the road as he raced back toward the hospital. The warehouse and Melissa would have to wait. Emma and her baby had become the priority. Michael's phone rang again. Dr. Lin calling back. He answered immediately. "Is she safe?" "She's gone," Dr. Lin reported, her voice tight with tension. "Mrs. Chen, too. The room's empty. Security is reviewing camera footage now." Michael's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "How long ago?" "Nurse. Checked on her 20 minutes ago. Everything was normal. 20 minutes. Frank's people worked quickly, but they couldn't have gone far with a pregnant woman in medical distress. Check if any staff are missing," Michael instructed, especially anyone who came on shift recently. As Dr. Lin went to investigate, Michael's mind worked through possibilities. Frank would want leverage, but also security. He wouldn't take Emma to any of his known properties. The answer came with sudden clarity. The warehouse, room 32, where Melissa was being held. Frank would consolidate his problems in one secure location. Michael changed direction, heading back toward the industrial district. As he drove, he accessed a secure messaging app on his phone, sending a single instruction to a contact listed only as oversight. The reply came almost immediately. "Assets deploying. 30 minutes. It wasn't ideal. Michael would be on his own for half an hour. But he'd faced worse odds, and he'd made a promise to Emma that he intended to keep. For the first time in years, this wasn't just about taking down a corrupt target. It was personal. Frank had threatened someone under Michael's protection, someone vulnerable who had trusted him. The conman who prided himself on emotional detachment found himself driven by something far more dangerous, genuine concern for another person's safety. As the warehouse came back into view, Michael checked his watch. 50 minutes until Frank's deadline. Enough time to find Emma and Melissa. Enough time to end Frank Sullivan's reign of terror once and for all. Michael approached the warehouse with calculated precision. The loading dock blind spot he'd identified earlier remained his best entry point, but security had visibly increased in the short time since he'd left. Frank was expecting him. He accessed a small compartment in the trunk of his car, revealing equipment no ordinary conman would possess. Tactical gear, specialized electronics, and several non-lethal weapons. Michael worked quickly, fitting an earpiece and arming himself with the essentials. A voice crackled through the earpiece. "Oversight online. Assets 18 minutes out. Warehouse schematics downloading to your phone." Michael checked the blueprint that appeared on his screen, quickly identifying the layout. Room 32 was on the second floor, in what appeared to be a segregated section of the building. 2 stairwells provided access, both likely guarded. Heat signatures show 14 individuals on the ground floor, 8 on the second floor, concentrated. In the northeast quadrant, Oversight reported. Unable to confirm identities. Emma would register differently, Michael murmured. Pregnancy creates a distinctive thermal pattern. Analyzing. Confirmed. 1 signature consistent with late term. Pregnancy detected. Second floor, northeast corner. Room 32, as suspected. At least Frank was predictable in his cruelty, placing Emma in the same room as her aunt. Whether Melissa was still alive remained to be seen. Michael circled to the eastern perimeter of the compound, where a drainage ditch provided cover. The fence here was topped with razor wire, but a tree growing close to the perimeter offered a potential crossing point. As he prepared to move, his phone vibrated. Dr. Lin. "What have you found?" he asked quietly. The nurse who checked on Emma right before she disappeared was using Sophia's ID badge, Dr. Lin reported, her voice tight with controlled anger. "But it wasn't Sophia. Security footage shows a different woman. Frank's people." Michael confirmed grimly. "There's more," Dr. Lin continued. "I reviewed the USB drive Sophia gave you. It contains records of over 30 women brought in with injuries consistent with abuse and captivity. All treated by Dr. Kaufman, all with minimal documentation. Evidence of trafficking, Michael noted. Yes, but also evidence of police involvement. There are notes about which officers to contact if complications arise. Names, badge numbers, amounts paid. This confirmed what Michael already suspected. Frank's protection extended deep into local law enforcement. It explained how he'd operated with impunity for so long. I've contacted an FBI agent I trust, Dr. Lin added. Someone outside local jurisdiction. She's reviewing the evidence now. Good. Michael approved. But we need to move carefully. Frank has Emma. And Mrs. Chen, Dr. Lin reminded him. Don't forget her, Mrs. Chen. Michael's chest tightened at the thought of the fierce older woman in Frank's clutches. She was more than an employee to him. She was the closest thing to family he had allowed himself in decades. I won't, he promised. Have your FBI contact stand by. Things are about to accelerate. Michael ended the call and returned his attention to the warehouse. The tree branch extended just far enough to allow him to clear the fence. He climbed swiftly, years of urban exploration making the task almost routine. Once inside the compound, Michael hugged the shadows, moving from one blind spot to another. The loading dock door was locked, but the electronic keypad was a model he recognized. 30 seconds with a specialized device from his pocket, and the door clicked open. Inside, the warehouse was divided into sections. The main floor operated as a legitimate storage facility, with crates and shipping containers arranged in orderly rows. But a partitioned area at the back held something very different, a processing center where women were photographed, documented, and prepared for distribution to various locations. Michael avoided the workers on the floor, slipping between containers as he made his way toward the stairwell. According to the schematics, the northeast corner was accessed through a security door at the top of the stairs. Update on assets? He whispered to Oversight. 14 minutes out. FBI liaison has been notified and is coordinating with local tactical teams. Not soon enough. Frank's deadline was approaching, and Michael needed to find Emma and Mrs. Chen before then. The stairwell was guarded by a single man with a handgun poorly concealed under his jacket. Michael waited until the guard checked his phone, then moved, swift and silent. A precise strike to the throat prevented any outcry, followed by a chokehold that rendered the man unconscious in seconds. Michael appropriated the guard's access card and dragged him into a storage closet. The second-floor door required both the card and a numeric code. Michael attached a decoder to the keypad and waited as it cycled through combinations. While the device worked, he received another message from Oversight. Warning, additional vehicles approaching the warehouse. Signatures match Sullivan's security team. Frank was bringing in reinforcements. Time was running out. The decoder beeped softly as it found the correct combination. Michael opened the door carefully, finding himself in a corridor with doors on either side, rooms numbered 30 through 38. Room 32 was in the middle, its door reinforced with a steel frame and equipped with a separate electronic lock. 2 guards stood outside it, both armed and alert. Michael couldn't risk a direct confrontation, not with Emma and potentially Mrs. Chen and Melissa inside. He needed a distraction. From his tactical vest, Michael removed a small device and placed it at the far end of the corridor. A timer set. For 30 seconds, he moved back to the stairwell and waited. The device activated, emitting a high-pitched alarm identical to the warehouse's fire system. Both guards reacted immediately, one moving to investigate, while the other spoke urgently into a radio. Michael seized the opportunity, emerging from the stairwell behind the remaining guard. A swift strike incapacitated him, and Michael claimed his access card. The other guard was returning, having discovered the device. False alarm, he began, then froze as he registered Michael's presence. Michael didn't give him time to react. A precisely thrown tactical baton struck the guard's temple, sending him crumpling to the floor. Michael moved quickly to the door of room 32, swiping the access card and entering the code he'd observed on the guard's keypad. The door opened to reveal a nightmare scenario. Emma sat on a bare mattress against one wall, her face pale with fear and physical distress. Mrs. Chen stood protectively beside her, a bruise darkening on her cheek, but her expression fierce and unbowed. And on another mattress lay a woman with auburn hair, thin and battered but unmistakably alive. Melissa Kane. Michael, Emma gasped, relief flooding her features. You came. Of course I came, Michael replied, moving swiftly to check Melissa's condition. She was conscious but weak, her eyes flickering open at his approach. Who? She. Managed. Her voice raspy from disuse. A friend of Emma's. Michael explained simply. I'm getting you all out of here. Mrs. Chen helped Emma to her feet. Baby coming, she warned Michael. Contractions started again. No time. Michael assessed the situation rapidly. Melissa was too weak to walk unaided. Emma was in labor. And Frank's reinforcements were arriving. Oversight. He spoke into his earpiece. We need immediate extraction. Second floor, northeast corner. 3 civilians, 1 in labor, 1 requiring medical attention. Assets still 8 minutes out, came the reply. Tactical team deploying, but the rest was cut off as the door to room 32 slammed open. Frank Sullivan stood in the doorway, flanked by his security chief Victor and 2 armed guards. His face was flushed with rage, his eyes cold with malice. Reeves, he snarled. Or whatever your real name is, you should have taken the deal. Time seemed to slow as Michael assessed his options. Frank and his men blocked the only exit. Emma was in labor, Melissa barely conscious, and Mrs. Chen, though fiercely protective, was in her 60s and already injured. The tactical team was still minutes away, too long in a hostage situation. Michael would have to handle this himself. Frank, he acknowledged calmly, deliberately positioning himself between the armed men and the women. Quite the operation you're running. Human trafficking, money laundering, corruption. The FBI will be impressed with your efficiency. Frank's expression tightened at the mention of federal authorities. There won't be any FBI. You won't leave this room alive. And neither will they. He gestured at Emma and Melissa. Such a tragedy. Pregnant. Girl goes into premature labor while searching for her missing aunt. Neither survives. Happens every day. And how will you explain the evidence? Michael questioned, playing for time. The financial records? The witness testimonies? The USB drive full of medical reports on abused women? A flicker of uncertainty crossed Frank's face. What USB drive? The one your pet doctor kept, Michael replied. Kaufman documented everything. Every girl, every injury, every payoff to your police friends. It's already with the FBI. Frank turned to Victor, his face reddening. You said Kaufman was handled. Victor shifted uncomfortably. He was, but he must have kept records we didn't find. While they were momentarily distracted, Michael caught Mrs. Chen's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. She understood immediately, inching toward a metal food tray on a nearby table, the only potential weapon in the room. It's over, Frank, Michael continued. Your protection is already crumbling. Officer Daniels was picked up by Internal Affairs an hour ago. Judge Westover is cooperating to save himself. The warehouse is surrounded. This last part was a bluff, but Frank couldn't know that. His eyes darted nervously to the window, though the blackout glass prevented any view of the outside. You're lying, he snarled, but doubt had crept into his voice. Am I? Michael took a calculated step forward. You built your empire on other people's fear, Frank. But what happens when you're the one who's afraid? Frank's control snapped. Shoot this son of a bitch, he ordered Victor. Victor raised his gun, but before he could fire, Emma cried out in pain, doubling over as another. Contraction seized her. The sound momentarily distracted everyone in the room. It was all the opening Michael needed. He moved with practiced precision, grabbing the metal food tray Mrs. Chen had positioned herself near and flinging it at Victor's face. The impact wasn't enough to seriously injure, but it disrupted his aim. The gun fired, the bullet embedding in the wall. In the same fluid motion, Michael closed the distance to the nearest guard, striking with surgical precision at vulnerable points: throat, solar plexus, knee. The man crumpled, his weapon clattering to the floor. Mrs. Chen, displaying unexpected agility, kicked the fallen gun away from the guard's reach and toward the corner where Melissa lay. The injured woman, more aware than she'd appeared, grabbed it with trembling hands. The second guard recovered from his surprise and took aim at Michael, who was now grappling with Victor. Frank bellowed orders, his face purple with rage. Then, a new voice cut through the chaos. Enough! Melissa Kane sat upright on her mattress, the guard's gun steady in her hands despite her weakened condition. She had it pointed directly at Frank. Not. Another move, she commanded, her voice hoarse but firm. Or I swear to God, Frank, I'll put a bullet in you right here. The room froze. Frank stared at Melissa, genuine fear flickering across his face for the first time. You don't have the guts, he scoffed, but his voice lacked conviction. Try me, Melissa challenged, her green eyes, so like Emma's, hard with 8 months of captivity and abuse. After what you've done to those girls. After what you did to me when I tried to help them. While attention was focused on this standoff, Michael used the distraction to disarm Victor completely, rendering him unconscious with a precise strike to the temple. The remaining guard, seeing the odds shift, slowly raised his hands in surrender. "Aunt Melissa," Emma gasped, tears streaming down her face. Despite her pain, she moved toward her aunt, supported by Mrs. Chen. "Emma," Melissa whispered, her expression softening momentarily, before hardening again as she refocused on Frank. "You stay right where you are," she warned him as he shifted slightly. Frank's calculating eyes darted around the room, measuring his diminishing options. His security chief was down. One guard neutralized. The other surrendered, but he still saw a potential advantage. "You're in labor," he said to Emma, his voice turning sly. "You need medical attention. Let me go, and I'll make sure you get to a hospital." "Don't listen to him," Melissa warned, the gun never wavering from Frank's chest. Michael moved to Emma's side, checking her condition. Her face was pale and damp, with sweat. Her breathing labored. "How far apart are the contractions?" he asked quietly. "Getting closer," Mrs. Chen answered for her. 4 minutes, maybe. Michael nodded, making a quick decision. "Oversight." He spoke into his earpiece. "Status update. Assets 3 minutes out," came the immediate response. "FBI tactical approaching from the south entrance. We need immediate medical extraction," Michael instructed. "Second floor, northeast corner. Pregnant woman in active labor." Frank laughed harshly. "Who the hell are you talking to? Your imaginary friends?" As if in answer, the building's alarm system suddenly blared to life. Distant shouts could be heard from the floors below. "That would be the FBI tactical team," Michael informed him calmly, "along with some colleagues of mine." Frank's face drained of color. For the first time, he seemed to realize that his empire was truly crumbling. With a desperate roar, he lunged toward Emma, intending to use her as a hostage. Michael intercepted him with cold efficiency, driving a precise strike to Frank's sternum that dropped the larger man to his knees, gasping for breath. "That's for Emma," Michael said quietly. As Frank struggled to rise, Michael delivered another calculated blow to his jaw. "That's for Melissa." A final strike rendered Frank unconscious. "And that's for every woman you've ever trafficked." The room was silent except for Emma's labored breathing and the distant sound of the tactical team securing the building. Michael turned his attention back to her, noting with concern that she'd grown paler. "Hang on," he encouraged her. "Help is almost here." Emma nodded weakly, then gasped as another contraction hit, stronger than before. "The baby?" she whispered. "It's coming now." Mrs. Chen quickly arranged the thin mattress as comfortably as possible, while Michael knelt beside Emma, taking her hand. "You're going to be okay," he promised, with more certainty than he felt. "Both of you." Emma's eyes locked with his, filled with pain, but also a strange calm. "I know," she said simply. "You keep your promises." The door burst open again, but this time it was a tactical team in FBI windbreakers, followed by medical personnel with a stretcher. Dr. Lin was among them, having insisted on accompanying the rescue team. As the medical team rushed to Emma, Michael stepped back, watching as professionals took over. The FBI agents secured Frank and his men, while additional medics attended to Melissa. In the controlled chaos, Mrs. Chen appeared at Michael's side. Despite her bruised face, she looked satisfied. "You did good," she said simply. Michael watched. As Emma was carefully transferred to the stretcher, her hand still stretched toward her Aunt Melissa on the adjacent gurney. The two women, separated for so long, clung to each other even as they were prepared for transport. "Not over yet," he replied quietly. "But it's a start." The hospital corridor buzzed with activity. FBI agents interviewed witnesses, medical staff rushed between rooms, and uniformed police officers stood guard at strategic points. In the midst of this controlled chaos, Michael sat alone, uncharacteristically still. Emma had been in labor for 6 hours. Melissa was undergoing treatment for malnutrition and injuries sustained during her captivity. Mrs. Chen, after receiving treatment for her bruised face and a sprained wrist, had refused to leave the hospital, instead dividing her time between Emma's delivery room and Melissa's bedside. Michael checked his watch, the same one that had recorded damning evidence against Frank Sullivan, and calculated how long it had been since he'd slept. 36 hours? Longer? It hardly mattered. Sleep wouldn't come until he knew Emma and her baby were safe. "Mr. Reeves?" He looked up to see a woman in her 40s, with the unmistakable bearing of a federal agent. Her FBI windbreaker had been replaced by a tailored suit, but her alert eyes and professional demeanor remained. Special Agent Kaminsky, she introduced herself, taking the seat beside him without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk," Michael nodded, unsurprised. "About Frank Sullivan?" "About you," she corrected. "Michael Reeves isn't your real name. In fact, you don't seem to have a real name, at least not one we can find in any database." "Is that a question?" Michael asked mildly. Agent Kaminsky studied him with clinical interest. "You took down one of the largest human trafficking operations in the state, exposed a network of corrupt officials, and rescued at least 30 women, all without any legal authority or official backing. I did what was necessary. You did what law enforcement should have done years ago," she acknowledged with unexpected candor. "The question is, who are you, really? And who is Oversight?" Michael smiled slightly. Of course they'd heard his communications. Just concerned citizens. Kaminsky clearly wasn't satisfied with this answer. But before she could press further, Dr. Lynn emerged from the delivery room, her surgical scrubs showing signs of a difficult procedure. Michael stood immediately. "Emma, she's stable," Dr. Lynn assured him. The delivery was complicated. Emergency C-section due to preeclampsia and fetal distress. But she's young and remarkably resilient. And the baby? A genuine smile broke through Dr. Lynn's professional demeanor. A girl. 4 pounds, 7 ounces. Small, but fighting hard. She's in the NICU, getting the care she needs. Relief washed over Michael. An emotion so unfamiliar that he had to look away momentarily to compose himself. "Can I see them?" "Emma's in recovery. She'll be groggy for a few hours." Dr. Lynn hesitated. "But the baby, I could arrange for you to see her briefly." Agent Kaminsky stood as well. "Our conversation isn't finished, Mr. Reeves, or whatever your name is, but it can." "Wait." Her expression softened slightly. "Congratulations on saving them both." As the agent walked away, Dr. Lynn led Michael through the maze of hospital corridors to the neonatal intensive care unit. After scrubbing and donning a sterile gown, he was allowed into the hushed, high-tech environment where the smallest and most vulnerable patients fought their first battles. Dr. Lynn guided him to an incubator where a tiny form lay amid a tangle of monitoring wires and tubes. Emma's daughter was impossibly small, her skin nearly translucent, her miniature hands clenched into determined fists. "She's a fighter," Dr. Lynn said softly, "just like her mother." Michael stared at the tiny life before him, remembering Emma's courage, her determination to protect her child, despite having no resources and no support. Something deep within him shifted, a protective instinct he'd thought long buried beneath years of calculated detachment. "She's beautiful," he said simply. "Doctor," Lynn nodded. "Emma will need help when she leaves the hospital. Both she and the baby will require ongoing care, follow-up appointments, and Melissa's recovery will take time as well." It was a question wrapped in a statement, an inquiry about Michael's intentions now that the immediate crisis had passed. "They'll have everything they need," he assured her. 4 hours later, Emma awoke in recovery. The first face she saw was Mrs. Chen's, sitting vigilantly beside her bed. "Baby," Emma whispered, her mouth dry from anesthesia. "She is strong," Mrs. Chen replied, offering a sip of water. "Small, but strong, like mother." Tears filled Emma's eyes. "I want to see her. Soon," Mrs. Chen promised. "Doctor says rest first." Emma's hand went instinctively to her now empty belly, feeling the bandaged incision beneath her hospital gown. Aunt Melissa, also resting. Down the hall, Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "She asks about you every time she wakes." Relief washed over Emma's face, followed by a shadow of worry. "And Frank? In custody," came Michael's voice from the doorway. He looked exhausted, but oddly at peace. "Along with his entire operation. They won't hurt anyone else." Emma smiled weakly. "You kept your promise." Michael moved to her bedside, unusually hesitant. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been cut open and had a human extracted from me," Emma replied with unexpected humor. "But alive. Free." Her expression grew serious. "Have you seen her? My daughter?" Michael nodded. "She's perfect. Small, but perfect. I want to name her Hope," Emma said, her voice strengthening with resolve, "because that's what kept me going when everything seemed darkest." "Hope," Michael repeated. "It suits her." A nurse entered with a wheelchair. Ms. Kane? If you're feeling up to it, we can take you to see your daughter now. With careful assistance from Mrs. Chen and the nurse, Emma was transferred to the wheelchair. The journey to the NICU seemed to revitalize her, determination overriding her physical discomfort. At the incubator containing her daughter, Emma reached out a trembling hand to touch the clear plastic barrier separating them. "Hi, Hope," she whispered. "I'm your mom." The tiny infant seemed to respond to her voice, one small hand uncurling slightly. Emma looked up at Michael, who stood slightly apart, watching this intimate moment. "Thank you," she said simply. "For everything," Michael nodded, uncomfortable with the naked gratitude in her eyes. "I should go. The FBI has questions, and there's still work to be done securing evidence against Frank's network." Before he could leave, Emma caught his hand. "Wait, there's something I want to do first." She turned to the nurse. "Can we go see my aunt now? I want her to meet Hope, even if it's just through a window." As they prepared to move Emma to Melissa's room, she looked up at Michael again. "I want to testify," she said firmly, "against Frank, about what he did to Aunt Melissa, to those other women, about how he left me on the street when I needed help." Michael studied her, seeing the same determination he'd recognized that first night in the rain. "It could be difficult, traumatic, and potentially dangerous even with Frank in custody. He has connections. I don't care," Emma declared, her voice steady despite her physical weakness. "I'm tired of men like Frank thinking they can do whatever they want because their victims will be too scared to speak up." She glanced down at her daughter. "I want Hope to grow up in a world where people stand up to monsters, not cower from them." Michael recognized the steel beneath her gentle exterior, the same resilience that had carried her through abandonment, homelessness, and premature labor. "If you're sure," he said finally, "I'll make sure you have protection, for as long as necessary." Emma nodded, her decision made. "I'm sure. For Hope, for Aunt Melissa, for all of them." As the nurse wheeled Emma toward her aunt's room, Michael watched them go, struck by the courage of this young woman who had every reason to hide, but chose instead to stand and fight. In that moment, he made a decision of his own. The city newspaper's headline was stark and unambiguous. "Trafficking ring exposed. Bar owner. Officials arrested in pre-dawn raids." Below it, a photo showed Frank Sullivan being led away in handcuffs, his once confident expression replaced by stunned disbelief. Michael folded the paper and set it aside. In the 2 weeks since the warehouse raid, the case against Frank had expanded exponentially. Evidence seized from his properties revealed a network spanning 3 states, involving dozens of corrupt officials and victimizing hundreds of vulnerable women. The hospital room had become a temporary command center. Melissa, now strong enough to sit up and speak at length, was providing detailed testimony to Agent Kaminsky. Her memory was precise, her determination unwavering as she named names, described locations, and identified victims. "The girls from Eastern Europe came through a connection at the Port Authority," she explained, her voice stronger each day. Frank's contact would flag certain containers for expedited processing. "No inspections." Agent Kaminsky nodded, taking meticulous notes. "And you witnessed this directly?" "I overheard Frank and Victor discussing it when I was delivering drinks to the private room. That's when they started watching me closely." Melissa's hands trembled slightly, but her gaze remained steady. "A week later, I found documentation. In the office. Shipping manifests with certain containers highlighted. When I tried to photograph them with my phone, Victor caught me." Emma sat nearby, cradling baby Hope, who had been deemed strong enough to leave the NICU the previous day. Though still tiny, the infant had her mother's determined spirit, surprising the medical staff with her rapid progress. "What happens now?" Emma asked as Agent Kaminsky paused her questioning. "Frank's initial court appearance is tomorrow," the agent explained. "Given the evidence and the high-profile nature of the case, the prosecutor is pushing for no bail. Will he succeed?" Michael asked from his position by the window. Agent Kaminsky's expression was cautiously optimistic. "With multiple victims coming forward, extensive documentation, and the involvement of federal charges for trafficking across state lines, it's looking good." As if to confirm her assessment, the hospital room door opened to admit Dr. Lin, accompanied by a young woman Michael recognized from the warehouse rescue, one of the girls who'd been brought through the hospital's service. Entrance. "Sophia has decided to make a formal statement," Dr. Lin announced, her hand supportive on the girl's shoulder. Sophia, barely 20, with the haunted eyes of someone who had seen too much, straightened her shoulders with newfound courage. If Melissa and Emma can speak up, so can I, she declared. And I think others will too. Now that they know Frank cannot hurt them, it was happening across the city. Women who had suffered in silence, believing themselves powerless against Frank's connections, were finding their voices. Some had escaped his network years ago, but had been too afraid to come forward. Others were still healing from recent abuse. Together, they formed a chorus too powerful to ignore or dismiss. By evening, news broke that Officer Daniels had accepted a plea deal, agreeing to testify against higher-ranking officials in exchange for leniency. Judge Westover had been suspended pending investigation. 3 city councilmen had unexpectedly resigned, citing personal reasons. Frank's protection was crumbling, just as Michael had predicted in that warehouse room. "You look satisfied," Emma observed as they shared a quiet moment alone, Hope sleeping peacefully in her arms. Michael's expression remained neutral, but his eyes held a rare warmth. "Justice is rarely this comprehensive. Because of you," Emma pointed out. "You built the case. You found the evidence. You rescued us. I provided the tools," Michael corrected. "But it was Melissa's courage in sending that text message that broke the case open, and it's the testimony of women like you and Sophia that will ensure Frank never harms anyone again." Emma studied him curiously. "Agent Kaminsky still doesn't know who you really are, does she?" Michael's slight smile was answer enough. "Will you disappear when this is over?" Emma asked, voicing the question that had been troubling her. "Move. On to your next project?" Before Michael could respond, Mrs. Chen entered with a tray of food for Emma. The older woman had appointed herself guardian of both Emma and Melissa, ensuring they ate properly and rested adequately between interviews and medical treatments. "Eat," she instructed Emma. "Baby needs strong mother." As Emma accepted the tray, balancing it carefully to avoid disturbing Hope, Mrs. Chen turned her attention to Michael. "FBI woman looking for you. Again." Michael nodded, unsurprised. Agent Kaminsky remained determined to uncover his true identity and connections. So far, he had managed to deflect her inquiries, but he knew her persistence would eventually require a more permanent solution. "I should go," he said, rising from his chair. Emma caught his hand. "You didn't answer my question." Michael hesitated, genuinely uncertain. His usual pattern after completing an operation was to disappear, adopt a new identity, move to a new location. Clean breaks, no attachments, no complications. But nothing about this situation followed his usual patterns. "I don't know," he admitted. Finally, the honesty feeling strange on his tongue, Emma seemed to understand the significance of this admission. She nodded, releasing his hand. "We'll be okay, you know. Whatever you decide. Aunt Melissa and I were survivors too." As Michael left the room, he found Agent Kaminsky waiting in the corridor, her expression indicating she had news to share. "Frank Sullivan is trying to make a deal," she informed him without preamble. "He's offering information on his suppliers, his connections in other cities. In exchange for what? Reduced charges, witness protection." Her disgust was evident. "The prosecutor hasn't accepted, but it's being considered given the potential to dismantle larger networks." Michael absorbed this, calculating implications. "He's desperate, afraid." "With good reason," Kaminsky agreed. "His former associates are equally eager to make deals. No honor among traffickers." They walked together toward the hospital exit. An unlikely alliance formed through shared purpose if not shared methods. "The women rescued from the warehouse?" Michael inquired. "What happens to them now? Support services, temporary housing, legal assistance for those without documentation." Kaminsky sighed. "It's not perfect, but it's something. They have options. Now. Options. Choices. Freedom. The things Frank had stolen from his victims were being gradually restored. It wouldn't erase the trauma they'd endured, but it was a start. As they reached the hospital entrance, Kaminsky turned to face him directly. "I still have questions about you and your organization. Oversight. A lot of questions." Michael met her gaze evenly. "And I appreciate your prioritizing the victims and the case against Frank instead of pursuing those questions. For now." The implied time limit hung between them, an acknowledgement that this temporary truce would eventually end. The agent would do her job. Michael would do what was necessary to protect his identity and operations. But for now, they shared a common goal: ensuring Frank Sullivan and his network faced justice for their crimes. And in that moment, it was enough. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters and cameras, all jostling for position as Frank Sullivan was led away after his sentencing hearing. His once imposing figure now appeared diminished in prison orange, shoulders hunched against the glare of public scrutiny and the weight of his 25-year sentence without possibility of parole. From a distance, Michael observed the scene, unnoticed among the spectators. 3 months had passed since the warehouse raid. 3 months of testimony, evidence processing, and legal maneuvering. Throughout it all, Emma had demonstrated remarkable resilience, appearing in court despite the challenges of new motherhood, to deliver powerful testimony about Frank's cruelty and indifference. Melissa, too, had testified. Her quiet dignity and unflinching accounts of what she'd witnessed in Frank's operation, devastating to the defense's attempts to portray him as a legitimate businessman caught up in activities he knew nothing about. In the end, the evidence had been overwhelming. Frank's empire had crumbled completely, taking down 3 police officers, a judge, 2 city councilmen, and numerous other accomplices with it. Some had struck deals to testify against Frank, others awaited their own trials. None would escape consequences. Michael's phone vibrated with a text from Mrs. Chen. Coming home today? Home. The concept still felt foreign, despite the fact that he'd maintained his residence in the city throughout the trial. He'd expected to move on once Emma and Melissa were safe, once Frank was in custody. Yet somehow 3 months later, he remained. Yes, he texted back. Need anything? The reply came immediately. Baby formula, the organic kind. Michael smiled slightly. Mrs. Chen had unofficially adopted both Emma and Melissa, insisting they stay at the mansion during their recovery and the trial. What had begun as a temporary arrangement had gradually evolved into something more permanent, with Mrs. Chen fiercely protective of the young mother and baby and equally supportive of Melissa's healing process. As for Michael himself, he had maintained a careful distance, present but not intrusive, supportive but not assuming. He'd arranged for medical care, security, legal assistance, all the practical necessities, but emotions, attachments, those remained unexplored territory. He purchased the formula at a specialty store near the courthouse, then drove home through the autumn afternoon. The mansion that had once been merely one of many properties, a shell, a facade for a false identity, had somehow acquired the subtle markers of habitation: toys in the living room, baby clothes folded on the sofa, Melissa's books on the side, tables, signs of life and permanence. Inside, he found Mrs. Chen in the kitchen, preparing dinner while keeping one eye on Hope, who lay on a blanket nearby, kicking her legs energetically. At 3 months old, she had outgrown her initial fragility, developing into an alert, engaging infant with Emma's expressive eyes. You saw sentencing? Mrs. Chen asked, accepting the formula. Michael nodded. 25 years, no parole. Good, she declared firmly. Evil man. Where are Emma and Melissa? Garden, talking. Mrs. Chen gave him a meaningful look. Important talk. Michael understood. The 2 women had decisions to make now that the trial was over. Melissa had received a settlement from the city due to police negligence in investigating her disappearance, and various support organizations had arranged housing and employment opportunities for her. Emma, too, had options: educational scholarships, support services for young mothers. The question hanging unspoken was whether they would stay or move on, and beneath that question lay another, one Michael hadn't allowed himself to fully examine. What did he want them to do? He stepped outside to the garden terrace, where Emma and Melissa sat in comfortable chairs, deep in conversation. They looked up as he approached, their expressions warming with welcome, a reception Michael was still not entirely accustomed to. It's done, he informed them. Frank got the maximum sentence. Emma released a long breath. Good. I've been so nervous all day. You have nothing to be nervous about, Melissa assured her, reaching over to squeeze her niece's hand. Your testimony was powerful. Everyone in that courtroom could see your strength. Our strength, Emma corrected, returning the squeeze. We did it together. Michael remained standing, feeling oddly like an intruder on their moment of shared victory and relief. Sensing his discomfort, Emma gestured to an empty chair. Join us? We were just discussing next steps. He sat, careful to maintain his composure. You've made decisions? Emma and Melissa exchanged glances, a silent communication born of their shared ordeal and renewed connection. I've been offered a position with a victims advocacy group, Melissa explained. using my experience to help other survivors navigate the legal system, find resources. That's excellent, Michael said, genuinely pleased. Melissa's intelligence and compassion, combined with her first-hand understanding of trauma, would make her a powerful advocate. And I'm going back to school, Emma added. Online classes at first, while Hope is still so young, then in person once she's a bit older. Her expression turned serious. I want to study criminal justice, maybe law someday. Michael nodded, unsurprised by her ambition. Both worthy goals. A moment of silence fell, the unaddressed question hovering between them. Finally, Emma spoke it aloud. We've been wondering, that is, we wanted to ask. She took a deep breath. Would it be possible for us to stay here? For a while longer, at least? We'd contribute, of course. Pay rent once we're both working. The question caught Michael off guard, though perhaps it shouldn't have. He'd been so focused on maintaining distance, on not presuming, that he hadn't considered they might want to remain. This house has 7 bedrooms, he said finally. Most of them empty. It would be practical for you to stay. Practical. A safe word, devoid of emotional implications, yet all 3 of them recognized it for the significant concession it was. Besides, he added, his tone lightening slightly, I believe Mrs. Chen would stage a revolt if I suggested you leave. She's become quite attached to Hope. Emma smiled, relief evident in her expression. Hope's attached to her too, to all of this. She gestured around the garden, the house beyond. It's the only home she's known. Home. There was that word again, with all its complex associations and implications. Then it's settled, Michael declared, rising from his chair with sudden need for movement, for space to process this unexpected development. You'll stay as long as necessary. As he turned to go, Melissa spoke up. Michael, he paused, looking back at her. Thank you, not just for the room and board, but for everything. For finding me, for saving Emma and Hope, for bringing Frank to justice. Her gratitude was sincere, her gaze direct and unflinching. Unlike many who had encountered Michael's various personas over the years, Melissa saw him clearly, the complexities, the contradictions, the carefully maintained distance. You're welcome, he replied simply, unable to find more adequate words. Back inside, he found Mrs. Chen smiling knowingly as she prepared tea. They stay, she stated, rather than asked. For now, Michael confirmed, maintaining his emotional reserve even with her. Mrs. Chen nodded, satisfied. Good. House needs family. Family. An even more loaded term than home. Michael chose not to engage with it, instead focusing on practical matters. Agent Kaminsky called again. She's still investigating oversight. She finds nothing, Mrs. Chen said confidently. Too well hidden. Perhaps, Michael allowed, but eventually I'll need to create distance. New identity, new location. Mrs. Chen gave him a penetrating look. Always running. Maybe time to stop? Before Michael could respond to this unprecedented suggestion, Hope began fussing on her blanket. Without thinking, he moved to her, crouching, down to adjust her position and offer a toy. The baby grasped his finger instead, her tiny hand surprisingly strong, her gaze fixing on his face with innocent curiosity. No judgment, no wariness, no agenda, just pure, uncomplicated connection. Something shifted in Michael's chest, a sensation so unfamiliar it was almost painful. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine what Mrs. Chen had suggested, staying, building something permanent, allowing these unexpected connections to deepen and grow. It was terrifying, exhilarating, impossible. Yet as Hope's tiny fingers held his, Michael found himself considering the impossible with unprecedented seriousness. 6 months later, the mansion was transformed. What had once been a sterile showcase, a prop in Michael's elaborate performances, now bore the unmistakable signs of genuine habitation. Family photographs lined the hallway. Baby toys occupied the living room. The kitchen had become the heart of the house, always filled with the aromas of Mrs. Chen's cooking and the sounds of conversation. Michael stood at his office window, watching as snow fell gently on the garden. Behind him, his computer displayed multiple screens of information, new identities being created, properties being liquidated, accounts being transferred, the preparations for departure that had once been second nature to him. Yet for 6 months, he had been making these preparations without actually leaving. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Emma stood in the doorway, Hope balanced on her hip. At 9 months old, the baby was thriving, a happy, curious child who showed no lasting effects from her premature birth. "Are we interrupting?" Emma asked. "Not at all," Michael replied, closing the computer screens with a gesture. "What can I do for you?" "We're heading to the shelter opening," Emma reminded him. "Melissa's giving the dedication speech. We were hoping you'd come with us." The shelter. Another change in the aftermath of Frank's case. With the settlement money from the city, combined with donations from various organizations, Melissa had established a safe house for trafficking victims. Today marked its official opening. "Of course," Michael agreed, reaching for his coat. "I didn't realize it was that time already." Hope babbled happily as they made their way to the car, her small hands gesturing expressively. Though she had yet to speak actual words, she communicated with impressive clarity through sounds and gestures, her personality emerging as determined and curious, much like her mother. Mrs. Chen was already waiting in the vehicle, dressed in her finest coat and looking uncharacteristically emotional. "Proud day," she declared as they set off. "Very proud." The shelter was located in a renovated apartment building in a quiet neighborhood, unassuming from the outside, but carefully designed within to provide both security and comfort. As they arrived, Melissa greeted them at the entrance, her face alight with purpose and joy. "You're just in time," she told them, leading the group inside. "The mayor's about to speak, then me, then we'll do the ribbon cutting." The lobby was filled with supporters, officials, and most importantly, advocates and survivors. Many were women who had testified against Frank, now finding new purpose in supporting others who had endured similar experiences. Michael remained at the back of the crowd during the speeches, watching as Melissa took the podium with confidence. Her time in captivity had left physical scars that would never fully fade, but her spirit had not only healed, it had grown stronger, more determined. "This shelter is named for all the women who weren't found in time," she began, her voice steady and clear, "for those who never made it home. But it's also a testament to hope, the hope that kept me alive during my darkest hours, the hope that my niece so fittingly named her daughter after." From his position, Michael could see Emma's eyes filling with tears as she held Hope close, the baby unusually quiet as if sensing the importance of the moment. "The Butterfly Haven isn't just a shelter," Melissa continued. "It's a promise that no woman who escapes trafficking will ever have to face the aftermath alone. A promise that there will always be safe harbor, resources, support, and, most importantly, community." The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone familiar with the case. The butterfly, once a mark of ownership used by traffickers, had been reclaimed as a symbol of transformation and freedom. After the ceremony and reception, as guests mingled and toured the facility, Michael found himself drawn to a quiet corner where photographs lined the wall. Images of survivors at various stages of recovery, attending therapy, learning new skills, graduating from programs, reuniting with families, a visual testament to resilience and healing. "Quite a change from 6 months ago," came Agent Kaminsky's voice beside him. Michael turned, unsurprised by her presence at the event, but somewhat taken aback by her friendly tone. "Progress," he acknowledged. "In more ways than one," she agreed, studying him with professional curiosity. "You're still here, still using the name Michael Reeves, still living in the same house. That's not your usual pattern, is it?" The question was direct, but not confrontational. Over the months since Frank's arrest, a cautious respect had developed between them. Agent Kaminsky recognizing the value of Michael's work, Michael acknowledging the importance of her legal approach. "I've been busy," he replied noncommittally. Her skepticism was evident. "Nothing to do with them?" She nodded toward Emma, who was chatting with shelter staff while Hope charmed everyone around her. Michael didn't respond, unwilling to articulate the complex emotions that had kept him anchored to this place. "These people, your oversight colleagues, have been unusually quiet," Kaminsky observed. "No similar operations in months, almost as if they're waiting for something, or someone." Again, Michael remained silent, though internally he acknowledged the truth of her observation. His network of operatives, former victims who had become vigilantes, skilled professionals with personal vendettas against corruption, technological experts who preferred justice to profit, had indeed been giving him space, allowing him time to make a decision unprecedented in his career: stay or go. "For what it's worth," Kaminsky continued, her tone softening slightly, "whatever you decide, I think you've done good work here. Not just taking down Frank, but what came after. Supporting the witnesses, funding the shelter, giving Emma and Hope a home. Before Michael could respond to this unexpected assessment, Hope's excited babble drew their attention. Emma was approaching, the baby reaching out her arms toward Michael in a gesture that had become familiar. "Someone wants her favorite person," Emma said with a smile, transferring Hope to Michael's arms. The baby settled against him with complete trust, her small hand patting his cheek in what had become their private greeting. Michael found himself smiling in response, the genuine emotion still feeling foreign on his face. Agent Kaminsky observed this interaction with undisguised interest. "Well," she said, preparing to move on, "I'll leave you to it. But our conversation isn't over, Mr. Reeves." Just paused. As she walked away, Emma raised an eyebrow. "She's still investigating you?" "Always," Michael confirmed, adjusting Hope more comfortably in his arms. "It's her job." "Are you worried?" Michael considered the question, surprised to realize the answer was no. Not because Kaminsky wasn't capable of eventually uncovering his secrets, but because for the first time in decades, he was considering the possibility of not needing those secrets anymore. "It's time for the family photo," Emma said, interrupting his thoughts. "Melissa wants all of us in it. You too." Family. The word still triggered conflicting reactions. Old pain from his childhood abandonment, instinctive wariness from years of deliberate isolation, but now also something new, something warm and tentative, like a seedling pushing through hard ground toward sunlight. The photograph would be displayed prominently in the shelter's main hall, Melissa in the center, Emma beside her with Hope, Mrs. Chen standing proudly next to them, and Michael somewhat awkwardly completing the group. A visual record of connection, of belonging. As they gathered for the picture, Melissa addressed the assembled supporters and staff. "This shelter exists because one person decided not to look away," she said, her gaze finding Michael in the crowd. "Because one person recognized that sometimes justice requires more than following the rules. Sometimes it requires courage, determination, and a willingness to get involved when it would be easier to walk away." The photographer positioned them carefully, adjusting their stances and expressions. Just before the flash, Hope reached out. From Emma's arms toward Michael, her small face alight with unguarded affection. "Dada," she exclaimed clearly, her first real word, spoken with confidence and joy. A collective awe rose from the onlookers, who naturally assumed what such a declaration implied. Emma looked startled, then amused, her eyes meeting Michael's with a mixture of apology and something deeper, more questioning. Michael found himself frozen, the unexpected word resonating through him like a physical shock. Not just the word itself, but the simple trust and love behind it. Hope didn't know about his past, his carefully constructed facades, his lifetime of calculated detachment. She knew only that he was a constant presence, a source of security, someone who always came when she called. In her innocent perception lay a truth Michael had been avoiding for months. He had already made his decision. Perhaps had made it the moment he stepped out of the shadows to help a pregnant girl in the rain. The flash captured them in that moment of revelation. Emma's gentle question, Hope's reaching arms, Michael's expression of startled recognition, and around them, Melissa and Mrs. Chen, watching with knowing smiles, as the man who had spent a lifetime running finally found a reason to stay. Later, as they drove home through the snowy evening, Hope slept peacefully in her car seat. Emma watched. The passing city lights, her expression thoughtful. "She didn't mean to put you on the spot," she said quietly. "She's just at that age, connecting words to people." Michael nodded, his hands steady on the steering wheel despite the emotional turbulence beneath his calm exterior. "It's natural. We can correct her, if you want. Teach her something else to call you." The offer was sincere. Emma had always been careful not to presume, not to push for definitions or commitments. She, perhaps better than anyone, understood the value of allowing people their own boundaries, their own timetables for trust and connection. Mrs. Chen, dozing in the back seat beside Hope, opened one eye at this exchange but remained silent, though her expression spoke volumes. Michael drove in silence for several blocks, the question hanging between them. Finally, as they turned onto the long driveway leading to the mansion, the home they had built together over these months, he made his decision. "No," he said simply. "No need to correct her." Emma's sharp intake of breath was the only indication of her surprise. "Are you sure?" "Because we don't expect—" "I'm sure," Michael interrupted, his voice gentler than usual. For the first time in a very long time, I'm sure. As they pulled up to the house, lights glowing welcomingly in the winter evening, smoke curling from the chimney, Michael allowed himself to fully acknowledge what he had been gradually accepting for months. This was no longer a temporary arrangement, a brief deviation from his solitary path. This was home. These people were family. And he, the man who had worn 100 different names and lived a dozen different lives, had finally found the one identity that mattered most: father, protector, home. Hope's innocent declaration had named not just a relationship, but a transformation. The con man who had specialized in taking down predators had been himself transformed by the very connections he had spent a lifetime avoiding. And as they carried the sleeping baby inside, as Mrs. Chen began preparing tea, as Emma touched his arm with tentative gratitude, Michael realized that his greatest deception had been the lie he had told himself for so many years, that he was better off alone, that connections were weaknesses, that the past defined the future. Hope had seen through that deception with the clarity only a child possesses, and in doing so, had given him the most precious gift of all, a new beginning.